us to call it. We're not going to call it that. We're going to call it what it is. The Ballistic Engineered Armored Response Counterattack Truck. It is not a Bearcat. There's no rescue in Bearcat. That's all I'm going to say. Do not say Bearcat. Say Ballistic Engineered Armored Response Counterattack Truck. Got it?
We are here in Concord on August 12th, 2013 to express our dismay and alarm at the City Council and the City of Concord calling the Free State Project and its participants domestic terrorists. Participants here are obviously not very pro-Bearcat, which is a armed vehicle, counterattack vehicle, and they're here to express the fact that they don't think police should be militarized, and I am here to speak on behalf of the Free State Project to help people understand that you cannot fraudulently make claims that we are domestic terrorists when of course we are a peaceful movement. Tonight, I'm hoping, best case scenario, they may even table it because the mayor is not here, he's on vacation. Funny how that happened, huh? And hopefully we'll just get it tabled and that'll give them some time to amend it.
So if you believe that you're a voter and not a terrorist or a taxpayer or a friend, you can be friend. Would you like to be friend?
Oh, I'll be friend. Oh no, you can be friend. The outfit says
Oh, my neighbor. What's going on?
You showed up to the sign.
I don't know anything about the Navy. We're here about a ballistically engineered tank.
Why don't you be my neighbor? JJ's
Oh my God.
I'm so excited to be here. I moved here 72 hours ago. My name is Amanda Billyrock, and this whole thing about being called a domestic terrorist reminds me so much of the opposites that were stated in 1984, the book 1984, do you remember? War is peace, ignorance is strength, and freedom is slavery. How opposite is it when the most peaceful people I know of are labeled terrorists? What is the definition of a terrorist? One who terrorizes. Who does that make the terrorists? Right? The people who want an assault tank to specifically single out peaceful people are terrorists. And the more we say that, the more we speak the truth, the more we label the terrorists as what we are, the better off we will be.
No tanks! Tanks, no tanks! Tanks, no tanks!
I'm a country.
Tanks, no tanks!
Rounded up and Bearcat police to get his mail.
Tanks, no
I do all my
tanks!
shopping up and down
Tanks,
Loudon
no
Road.
tanks!
Sometimes I even go on Main Street.
No tanks! Well, I think you have to be
Both sweeping everyone with their guns. I've been around a lot of guns in New Hampshire and I've never felt endangered. But these militarized cops with these Bearcats, that's when I felt endangered. So, thanks.
I said, you realize there are 200 people outside who have something to say about this. And they were like, well, it's a really small, I was like, can we move it to another venue? And they're like, well, no, but we'll rotate people in and out. So I don't know. But what I want to do is go up and I want to hear if it's soundproof or not. So that, maybe we just have a lot of chanting.
Force them to move it to a bigger place?
I don't know if they can, but sorry. Oh, everyone's coming.
evening and welcome to the August City Council meeting in the City of Concord. The mayor happens to be away, and I think it's an interesting meeting. We're going to cheer. I'll have to talk to him about that when he gets back from vacation. I do want to start, before we start off, there are some people, what we're going to do is we're going to suspend the rules and take one item before the Lenco Bearcat item. We're going to take the property acquisition at Portsmouth Street first. And I want to... Because I'm guessing there's only like a few people that want to talk about that. The problem is not all of them can get in right now to speak. So I guess what I'd ask is if some of you in the back would be able just to clear out to let them come in to speak. And then you can come back in after that. But there are some people, I'm told, that are on the stairwell that can't get in that want to talk about property acquisition. So if you do that, I'd appreciate it. Going once, going twice. The public hearing's closed. Madam Clerk, if you could read the next item, please. And just, actually, just for a point of information, for those of you who haven't been here, what we do is we have all the public hearings first. We don't take a vote on anything until after all the public hearings are closed. So in case you're waiting, thinking we're going to take a vote on the land acquisition, that's not going to happen for a while. Madam, see, now people are leaving. Madam Clerk.
Next item is a resolution accepting and appropriating $258,024 in unmatched grant funds from the Office of Domestic Preparedness, State Homeland Security Program, and Law Enforcement Terrorism Prevention Program, designated for the purpose of purchasing a specialized response rescue vehicle.
Mr. Manager.
Members of the council, Chief Duval has a presentation that I'd like to make.
Allow me just 1 minute to prepare, please.
Is this going to be a PowerPoint?
Yes, it is.
Thanks.
Do we suspend the rules for these gentlemen too?
You're out of order, sir. This is how we do every council meeting.
Mayor Pro Tem, members of the Concord City Council, Mr. Manager, I have a brief presentation I'd like to go over prior to 20 questions that you might have. This is as a result that stemmed from an application last September when I came to the council and asked for permission to apply for a federal grant through the Department of Homeland Security to acquire a kid here who's really back there.
If you guys could keep the noise down, that way we could hear the testimony, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. To apply for an application to acquire an armored rescue vehicle, also known as a Bearcat. The application phase was ended in the end of January, and we received notification in the last couple of months that the City of Concord was awarded the grant that we requested. This is going to give you a historical perspective, if you will, of the Concord Police Department's tactical unit in our association with the Central New Hampshire Special Operations Unit. The Concord Police Department formed a tactical unit in the early 1990s. It comprised of approximately 16 members of the Concord Police Department. These were police officers. Each member was issued equipment and received advanced tactical training back during that period of time. Over the years, there were rising costs of training, equipment, and also overtime became prohibitive because we had to keep a staff of 16 trained to respond to specialized police responses. In 2007, the Concord Police Department joined a regional team also known as the Central New Hampshire Special Operations Unit. It's comprised of approximately 20 member communities in the central New Hampshire region. Concord is the largest of the members. Our purpose, the Central New Hampshire Special Operations Unit serves to provide mutual aid law enforcement assistance, logistical support to the municipal, county, and applicable state agencies party to the agreement in high-risk situations, including drug raids, hostage rescue, barricaded subjects, search and rescue, or other situations requiring exceptional police action which are beyond the normal resources and or capabilities of an individual police department. The team composition is as follows. We have leadership on the team comprised of a team commander, there are team leaders, and alternate team leaders. We have operators, which are essentially police officers from a variety of police departments that are trained to perform specific functions if they have to engage a particular crisis. We also have crisis negotiators on the team who are trained to try to diffuse and to mitigate the situation without any type of forced action. We have medics on the team, and we have 2 medical doctors on the team. The medics and the medical doctors are not armed, and they perform essential functions if the need arises to rescue victims, to administer immediate medical attention, and to provide medical assistance for our police officers if lethal force is used upon them. We also have a communications expert. The Central New Hampshire Special Operations Unit has numerous assets, including weapons, personal equipment, communications capabilities, and vehicles. One of the vehicles that we have includes a 1981 United States Air Force surplus armored peacekeeper. These are pictures of the current asset that we now have. This is a peacekeeper. You'll notice that it's a square-like vehicle. It's armor-plated. It has portals on the side. And these are angle views from all 4 sides of the vehicle. These are 2 other photos of the same vehicle. The one on the top left is a view from the rear. And these are the access doors. And then the photograph at the bottom shows what the inside of the vehicle looks like. And you'll notice that there's a bench seat on one side, and there's also a bench seat on the other. It essentially allows police officers to be transported to a situation where a lethal force may have been used, is likely to be used, or there's some sort of lethality component. The vehicle is 30+ years old and is no longer reliable. The vehicle has served the Central New Hampshire Special Operations Unit for approximately 10 years. Recent mechanical problems have considerably diminished the reliability of the vehicle. Several costly repairs in recent months have occurred. It had to be towed by wrecker on the way to a call-out several months ago. It never made it to the call. The timeliness of the grant opportunity positioned the member communities to acquire this critical piece of equipment. Concord Police Department applied for the grant as a member community on behalf of the Central New Hampshire Operations Unit. And the last slide here is a picture of the peacekeeper that we currently have, and a picture, a reasonable facsimile, though the picture you see here is not the exact vehicle we're getting. It's the Model G3, but the purpose of my showing this is to show you that it's essentially a similar type vehicle. It's designed to transport my staff and staff from other police departments and medical staff should the need arise, and to respond to any other types of situations that may be unpredictable or lethal in nature. So that concludes my presentation. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Are there any questions from the councilors? Councilor McClure?
Thank you. Chief, could you tell me how we purchased the original vehicle?
The original vehicle was surplus. We actually received it from another police department who had upgraded their vehicle for new technologies, and it served their needs better.
And you said that was 10 years ago?
Approximately, yes.
I have another question about that.
No, go ahead.
How many, you said originally there were 20 Concord police officers in the original team.
Approximately 16.
16.
Yes.
How many, 20 communities are now in the compact?
Yes.
And how many individuals?
There's approximately 25 to 28. It fluctuates depending on retirements and attrition, but it's generally between 25 and 30 individuals that are on the team.
And there's representation from every community?
From most communities, there are.
Can you tell me how often the peacekeeper was used and a few examples of when it was used?
I'd be happy to. It's important to note that the peacekeeper, as it's currently used, our current asset, doesn't deploy for normal patrol operations. And in order for it to be, respond as part of the Special Operations Unit, certain conditions have to apply, and we have rules and bylaws that dictate when a member community makes a request for our team, certain conditions have to apply. It just can't be because, you know, a department, if you will, only has a few officers working, and it would be really nice to have, you know, 16 or 18 people. Normally, it has to be a barricaded subject, weapons, some sort of a lethality situation, a hostage situation. Those are examples of when a member community can make a request. Some examples. Since 2007, I have a list of all the call-outs from the Central New Hampshire Operations Unit. And I'll just go down and I'll give you some examples of call-outs. First one, armed burglary, shots fired at police officers. Second one, high-risk warrant service. Third, high-risk warrant service. Next, a delusional subject armed with a knife. Search warrant with drugs. Search and rescue. Barricaded armed subject. Barricaded armed subject. Barricaded armed subject. Burglary with unsecured weapons in his home. Homicide suspect in hotel, which was in Concord. Search and rescue, high-risk warrant, riot at the Merrimack County Jail, high-risk warrant service, barricaded subject, armed subject at the high school. So those would be examples of when we would call up the SOU, and typically when we would roll all our resources that would support the members that would show up on a call-out.
Thank you.
Councilor Grady Sexton.
Thank you, Your Honor. Chief, do you have the estimates of how much we're paying currently annually for the peacekeeper in terms of repairs, costs of housing, and how much we would be required as a city to pay for the Bearcat?
Well, the motor was replaced in the peacekeeper, our current asset, several years ago. But since then, it's been in a state of disrepair. We've had to replace not only tires but mechanical components, and it's in the many thousands of dollars. This asset would be owned by the city of Concord because we made application, but the member communities who provide resources to the SOU would be taking care of fuel, maintenance costs, insurance, and everything else, so the taxpayers of the city of Concord would not be exposed to anything, any financial liability towards the vehicle.
Paul?
Thank you, Your Honor. And would we be responsible for training costs for our officers in order to use the Bearcat? Is that an expense to the city, or?
The training for the vehicle is provided by the manufacturer, and so not just anybody would be able to drive it. It's a very heavy vehicle. I mean, it's plated with armor, so you know there's certain criteria for using that. But other than that, even besides the vehicle, we have our own training costs, but there would be no additional training costs for the vehicle.
Thank you.
Councilor Credible.
Thank you, Your Honor. When I was doing research with regards to our Bearcat, I came across an article that Manchester is the community that donated the peacekeeper to us. Is that correct?
It is correct.
Can I have a follow-up?
Yes.
My question is Manchester part of our SOU? Part of our 20 communities that are in this group?
No, Manchester has their own SWAT team for their city. Ours encompasses an area of 1,000 square miles, over 150,000 citizens.
Councilor Blanchard, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. Isn't it true that if we did not accept this money for whatever reason, this federal money, that it would simply go to another community for the same purpose? In other words, this federal money is specifically for this vehicle. Is that true?
There are certain monies that are set aside for public safety. If the council chose not to accept the money, that money would then go back into that pool, and there'd be other communities for other projects that would apply for and compete for that same amount of financial resource.
Right. Thank you.
Councilor Keach?
Thank you. Chief, do you see this vehicle as more of an offensive vehicle or a defensive vehicle? Or do you characterize it that way?
The vehicle allows police officers to get to a place to perform their tasks in exceptional situations, and to do so with as much safety as one can possibly prepare for. It is defensive. It has no weapons on the vehicle, and it's not an offensive asset whatsoever.
Follow up. Yeah. And I concur with that, because there's no mounted weapons, but it seems to me that it gets people in and out of danger and allows you to do what you need to do. So I just take exception to the characterization as a tank, because I don't see it as a tank. I see it as a defensive piece of equipment. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, and in many ways I would agree with that. I know it's been characterized as that, but it's not.
I've heard that.
Councilor Cohen?
Thank you. Chief, do you know what the specifications are for the current Bearcat, what you applied for as far as options and...
Yes, I do.
Could you share it with me?
I'd be happy to. The options include a diesel 6.7-liter turbo engine. It's a G3 four-wheel off-road upgrade package, which means the tires can run flat and still operate and get the officers where they need to be. It's a four-door configuration, which means it has a driver's door, a passenger door, two doors in the rear. But what's different about this particular vehicle, it also has doors on the side, so it enhances the capabilities of rescue, so you can approach it two different ways instead of just backing in and unloading or loading individuals from it. It has a radio prep package, which means radio communications. It's partially set up once you get it. Has an intercom system inside and out. It has a front-mounted receiver with ram post and plate, a hydraulic ram upgrade, rear auxiliary air conditioner and heat, radiation detection package, and explosive gas detection package. That's it.
Councilor McClure?
Thank you. I have a couple more questions. We're a member of the Central New Hampshire SOU.
Yes.
You mentioned that that group is responsible for maintaining the vehicle. So what is Concord's commitment monetarily to the SOU?
$3,000 a year.
And how long has that been going on?
Well, up until recently it was $2,500, which was the dues for several years. We recently increased it. Other teams in the state are up to $5,000. But having 20 communities contribute that way allows us to buy vests, replace weapons, ammunition, other types of clothing items, repairs for vehicles, allows us to prepare for the future.
Okay, thanks. You mentioned other communities with these vehicles. Could you talk a little bit about what other communities in New Hampshire have similar vehicles?
With me I have Sergeant Mike Pearl, who could probably give you an exhaustive list. I believe it's 6 or 7. I know Belknap County has a Bearcat. Manchester Police Department, Keene, New Hampshire. The Southern New Hampshire Special Operations Unit, which is comprised of the Derry and surrounding towns. There's a Portsmouth team.
It's the Seacoast.
Seacoast team.
Seacoast team, and Nashua also has one.
And Nashua.
So one more question then. If we didn't have this vehicle, who would we call? How, if we needed one, where would we get it?
Well, just a little over a year ago, Councilor McClure, we had an individual who barricaded himself on Hoyt Road here in Concord. And while our police officers were on the scene, unprotected, and basically Chevy Impalas, 3 shots rang out of that house. We did not have access to the peacekeeper for mechanical problems, so we called upon Belknap County, who ultimately arrived at the scene and provided our SOU with some protection. But they're the ones that we called and had a vehicle within 90 minutes or so.
That was their response time, 90 minutes.
4 hours. Was it 4 hours?
4 hours.
I'm sorry, 4 hours.
What would the response time be for our unit, for the Central New Hampshire unit?
Essentially, it would be immediate because by virtue of the size of my police department, I have assets, several human assets. We have more people, and so they'd be able to just leave the police station essentially and respond to the scene to make an assessment while other members of the SOU are responding. So it would be probably within 10 or 15 minutes at the most.
What are some other surrounding towns that belong to the Central New Hampshire SOU? The Sheriff's Department does, right? And other towns?
Allenstown, Ashland, Boscawen, Bradford, Chichester, Concord, Enfield, Groton, Hanover, Haverhill, Hebron, Lincoln, Merrimack County Sheriff's Office, Pembroke, Pittsfield, Plymouth State University, Sugar Hill, Sutton, Tilton, and Waterville Valley. And there have actually been a couple changes in additions and subtractions since this application, so a couple of those may not be accurate. Those are examples of the member communities.
Councilor Crivick.
Thank you. I was going to ask about the timing, but it prompted another question. It's come to discussion that the state police has one of these, as well as the National Guard here in Concord. Is that a true statement or not true?
The state police does not have a Bearcat, and I don't believe the National Guard has a Bearcat. So they have other vehicles that, I don't know what they have, but I don't believe they have a Bearcat.
Thank you.
I saw a lot of other hands up first. Councilor Bennett.
Thank you, Mark. Chief, my understanding there are 12 SWAT teams in the state. Some with vehicles and some without. It's my understanding that Lebanon has a SWAT team, and they are without a vehicle, and they respond if there's an issue that they don't believe that they can handle with the people that they have, that they call the state of New Hampshire. The state of New Hampshire come to the city of Concord aid if we call them.
Yes, and we would go to their aid if they called us.
Okay, I'm just saying that the state of New Hampshire would come. So I guess I would question, if you call Belknap County and it took them 4 hours, why don't you make a phone call to the state and see if they can come sooner?
Certainly an option.
Councilor Grady Sexton.
Chief, as you write down the list of all of the situations where the peacekeeper was necessary in this area, my mind unfortunately goes to the horrific and tragic events that happened in Greenland. I'm wondering if you know if they had a vehicle like this that they were able to use to enter that home or how that played out.
Well, this vehicle ultimately responded to Greenland. I'm not in a position to offer any testimony as to the onset of the fact patterns that evolved in the early hours of the whole incident. I know that the Bearcat was used as a critical asset, one, and in part to remove the remains of the chief that had fallen so they can do so safely without leaving them out there for hours and hours. And the second part of the component of this is a rescue vehicle that I think has gone, that is least mentioned about this, where there are situations where a vehicle like this can be used to protect citizens. A year ago, Christmas in upstate New York, I believe firefighters were shot upon and killed, and a Bearcat was used in that situation to rescue 30 citizens. It's not a frequent thing, but that upstate New York isn't very far away, and we've seen other examples where we can hardly predict what's going to happen. And for the capital city, I felt in my application for this that it was not only needed, but I didn't really have another option other than to protect my officers.
Any other questions? Councilor Blanchard?
Thank you. Councilor Bennett sort of clarified it by referring to SWAT team. So I just wanted the clarification that the Special Operations Unit is essentially a SWAT team. I mean, that what is commonly known as a SWAT team.
Well, a SWAT team is one component of what people think. I mean, ours is a Special Operations Unit. It has a SWAT component, absolutely, but it also has a search and rescue component, which They work as a team, again, not in a lethal situation, but they train if they're called upon in a member community to offer assistance. In fact, we offered a mutual aid assistance in Stewartstown, New Hampshire, when the young teenager was found missing and ultimately found murdered. We sent officers from our SOU in a search and rescue to help in the search up there. And it also, we're trained in crowd control as well. So it all depends on the situation. That's why we're more of a special operations unit. SWAT is really kind of a technical, barricaded subject, likely to have a lethal outcome.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
You know, I received a couple calls today. The event that occurred in Manchester, the murder of that child.
Yes.
People looking at, I think it was on NUR watching that on TV. It looked like it was a vehicle similar to what's proposed here at that site because it was an occupied, very public place. Was a vehicle like that used for?
I saw that video, Mr. Manager, and what you saw was the Manchester SWAT team or response team or a component of the SWAT team arriving in their Bearcat. That's what you saw.
20 minutes down the road, we just had a murder in the right.
And that essentially allowed them to pull right up in front of the building and deploy quickly.
Thank you. Any other questions? That's the greatest sexton.
Thank you, Honor. One last question. If this council were to reject this application and not accept the federal funding, would you anticipate coming back and asking us to pay for a similar vehicle or a Bearcat with city funding in the future? Would you recommend that for the department?
I think what the benefit of this grant is that it allows many communities to see the benefit of a resource that protects their officers and their citizens. I don't know that I would come as the city of Concord asking us, the taxpayers here, to underwrite an asset for all the other communities. There would have to be a conversation about some financial participation. But because of our participation in the SOU, this is precisely why grants like this were created, in my view, and how they benefit the majority of the citizens. It's not really, though Manchester doesn't participate in a regional unit, their city is 3 times the size. There are 140 or 50,000 people, whatever their population is. We're 42,000 people, and but where it makes sense for us is, again, those other member communities.
Any other questions at all? Oh, yes.
Chief, I think in the grant you mentioned that we do have a national presence also because of political campaigns, national campaigns that come to the state and particularly to Concord, and the resources you're asked to provide from the Secret Service and other levels. And so that's another key to this thing, isn't it?
It is key, and there are a lot of layers even beyond that I think folks may not even realize. I mean, the candidates, especially on the national level, that come to the city, those are kind of known and they're advertised and they have a political interest, but we have a lot of other dignitaries that visit for a variety of reasons that aren't widely publicized, and that our department is asked to provide security on some level and resource. And so those applications are even more widespread than just what people think of when they think of that. But to answer your question in short, yes.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
All right, so before I open the public hearing, how many people here wish to testify but did not have the opportunity to sign up on a pink sheet of paper? A couple. Maybe 5. No, I'm not calling you up. I'm just engaging.
There are about 150 people outside as well. Could we go ask them?
You're certainly welcome to let them know that they have the opportunity to testify.
Okay.
That makes the reason why I'm asking is because we obviously, can't have each person speak for an hour. So I need to set a time limit. So I'm trying to gauge how many people we have testifying. If all 150 want to testify, that basically impacts how much time I'm going to give people.
Granted.
So actually, public hearing's not open yet, but would you be willing to go outside if I called you first and ask them after you testify to give me an idea of where we're at?
Sure.
Okay, that's great. All right, well, at this point, I obviously have more than 30 cards here, so you're going to have 2 minutes apiece. We're looking at over an hour, just for the people here, let alone twice that many people outside. So I'm going to set a rule, if there's no objection from the council. Under our council rules, we can limit testimony. I'm going to limit it to 1 minute apiece. And, all right, how about 90 minute and a half? I mean, if it's 2 minutes, just with the cards here, let alone the people outside, that's way over an hour.
Aren't you here to hear us?
No, well, we're here to hear you. However, there are actually rules about how long this meeting can go. We actually have to suspend our own rules, and if it's beyond 11 o'clock, I believe, no.
Yes.
11 o'clock.
Wait,
hold on. Let me
I'm
answer
sorry,
first.
sir, but the
You're out of
police
order.
chief got a lot of time.
We're not part of the public hearing. That's not part of the public hearing. But my point is this: I mean, we could certainly, hear from everybody, but obviously we won't be able to finish the public hearing. So, if people want to drive back at our next council meeting to testify, that's certainly a possibility. However, beyond that, we certainly have the opportunity to set some rules. So I think, in fairness to everybody else that's here who wants to be able to testify, the person who testifies first, they're going to love it. The person that I don't get to is not going to enjoy driving back and not having the opportunity to speak to us. What I can do is provide a short, brief, few seconds after if you wish to come up a second time after everybody's had first time to testify. So now I am going to limit it to 1 minute. And I'm going to give this lady a little bit more than that, actually, because if you come back and say nobody out there wants to testify, then I'll expand it. I'll expand it. 1 minute is short, I realize that. But if 150 people are going to testify at 1 minute apiece, we're here all night.
And there's 10 other public hearings after this.
Right, this isn't just
we'll be doing that tonight by 11.
Okay. So at this point, I will open the public hearing.
Thank you for being willing to listen to us. My name is Carla Gericke, and I'm the president of the Free State Project. My original testimony is about 3 minutes long.
Well, we would put that as part of the record if you want.
Okay. Yes, I will be handing in all the letters that I have shared with City Manager and Chief Duvall. I'd like to introduce those as well. So I will it's 3 minutes, I timed it, that's what we were told. So I appreciate you giving me a little extra time. We, the people, are not the enemy. Free Staters are productive people moving to New Hampshire because of the shared values with our neighbors of small government and more personal responsibility. We are not terrorists. John Duvall testified here tonight, in my opinion, in a perjurous manner, because in his grant, he stated that Free Staters and occupiers and sovereign citizens are domestic terrorists, and that's the reason why he needs this tank. He did not mention, he said rescue vehicle several times. He did not mention that the grant application actually says that it is a TAC vehicle for CBRN, which is acronyms of military note that end with nuclear and explosion. It's not good. We do not, as he claimed, pose daily challenges to the city of Concord. We are here as residents of New Hampshire, and we are also here as taxpayers of this country. It's fine for him to sit here and to testify and to say, yeah, well, we wouldn't get it, we don't need it that badly if we're spending our own money. But if we're spending someone else's money, hey, it's all good, let's take the money. That's not right. You know, we're good people. In fact, I ran into Claudia Ryan. I volunteer for Concord Reads at the Concord Library here. So I am deeply offended that a grant application that has certain standards to it was used in a fraudulent and misleading manner. We are here today in great numbers, and there are 200 plus, maybe even 300 people here, to say that we are raising our voices to protest the manufactured, false, misleading, fraudulent, and secret claims made by the city manager and by John Duvall, the Chief of Police, in a federal grant application for a ballistic engineered armor response counterattack vehicle. As president of the Free State Project, I have publicly called for the retraction and amendment of the Department of Homeland Security grant. I also asked for a list of the daily challenges that we present, and lastly, I asked for a public letter of apology for the 14,600 Free State Project participants that were defamed in this application. None of these requests were met. In fact, people in this room didn't even respect me enough to write back to me. Chief Duvall, since then, has backpedaled in public, saying, oh yeah, you know what, they don't really present a domestic terrorist threat. I guess there's nothing like being caught out in a lie. I gave the city ample opportunity to do the right thing. They chose to do nothing, which means I will be filing a complaint, as several people have already done, with the Department of Homeland Security's Office of the Inspector General for fraud and political profiling. And I actually hereby call for the public resignation of the people involved with this. When ordinary people make misleading statements on government forms, there are severe consequences, including the possibility of imprisonment. State officials should be held to an even higher standard. Equally alarming to me is the fact that the chief of police of the state capital admitted on NHPR that he needs an attack vehicle to quell free speech at the State House. You don't have to agree with our pro-freedom, pro-choice, pro-personal responsibility, and limited government ideas to see the irony of what's unfolding here today. The role of government, I've got 2 more paragraphs.
It's been way over 3 minutes, it's been 4 minutes.
You can have my time.
I yield my time.
I yield my time.
Excellent, I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. Just remember that when you're coming back up here.
You don't have to agree with our pro-freedom, pro-peace, pro-personal responsibility, and limited government ideas to see the irony of what's unfolding here today. The role of government, is to protect the people you allegedly serve, us. The government, want to bring an attack vehicle to a debate is not only a gross abuse of power, but it is unconstitutional and it is immoral. You have a binding duty to be open, accessible, accountable, and responsive to the people you serve. You have done none of these things. You have a choice right now. You, as an individual, can do the right thing for the greater community of New Hampshire and vote not to accept an attack vehicle into one of the safest and most peaceful communities in the country. I hope you will serve us well.
Thank you very much. Again, please, if we could hold the applause. First of all, it's not appropriate. And second of all, it just adds a lot more time that you're taking away from your own testimony. So again, I'll say it for a second time, please no applause or detracting boos, anything on the other side. And would you be able to, thank you very much.
I'll go.
Michael Little. Start our 1 minute until I hear back. Okay?
Yeah, we'll go really quickly here. Thank you very much for the minute, and I realize we're on time frame, but I just want to realize that I spent 12 years where you are, and as far as I'm concerned, I would definitely vote to get this Bearcat. And I'll tell you why. 2 reasons. 1, I've been under fire. 2, I have used the tank, and I know what it looks like and how it operates. This is not a tank, this is a protected vehicle, number 1. When I was in Concord at 16 years old, you had 1 cruiser, a 38 in your holster, and that was the only problem you had. In California, they had a bank robbery. The police showed up. The fellows had automatic weapons, fully automatic weapons and everything, and the police couldn't even respond. They had to go to a gun store and borrow the weapons in order to respond. You have no idea of the weapons that are out on the street today. And those weapons will be used against our police force, wherever they are and for whatever reason that they have to respond. So just keep that in mind when you vote on this. You're protecting the lives of the officers who've already sworn what they will do, and you're protecting the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hold on a second, Mr. Little.
Yes.
We have some questions for you. Councilor Cullen?
Your Honor, if you could identify yourself and where you're from or where you live.
Oh, I'm Mike Little. I was born on Pillsbury Street. I lived on Broad Avenue, Laurel Street, and Silk Farm Road. And I've lived here all my life. Thank you.
Councilor Nye?
Thank you. I just would ask that people identify where they live in the city. I'd be greatly appreciated.
Pam Ian.
Thank you, council members. My name is Pam Ian. I live at 296 Pleasant Street in Concord. I've been a resident here since 1996. As a former police officer, I find the militarization of the police over the past few years to be very disconcerting and disturbing. The city of Concord does not need this vehicle. The original intent of police departments was to protect and serve, and with this type of vehicle, it reinforces a sense of predatory government at work. Police officers swear to uphold the Constitution, and their allegiance should be to that document and not to the whims of government agencies. And unfortunately, I do not believe that many officers understand this distinction today. My second point is, the federal government is in $17 trillion worth of debt. Okay, I know that's a big number. It's hard to get your minds around. The more time that we say we're going to take free money from the federal government through grants or whatever is ruining the economic future of this country. And I've heard it said here today, well, if we don't take it, someone else will. It's the responsibility of local and municipal governments to set an example to our federal government, which has proven to be very irresponsible. And I will accept any questions.
Councilor Cronenberg.
Thank you, Your Honor. Next month, the City Council will be having a public hearing with regards to $46,000 to spend on swift water rescue equipment through Homeland Security. Should we also deny that grant?
Where is the government getting, if the government is in debt, $17 trillion, would you please tell me where they're getting the money from? Are they printing it? Are they raising taxes? They don't have it. They're in debt. And I just don't think that the local governments should be contributing. I hear the same thing at the State House with the Medicaid money, that it's free money from them. They're going to pay for it. It's coming out of our tax money. And the federal government has proven that it is very irresponsible with money. And I don't think we should be contributing to it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Scott Hilliard.
Thank you, Your Honor, and I'll be brief. Good evening, councilors, Mr. Manager, Mr. Clerk. My name is Scott Hilliard, and I serve as the Merrimack County Sheriff. And my point in being here tonight was just to give you a little bit, a very quick version. I talk fast anyway, but a quick version of how the SOU was formed. I was part of the original, I was a police chief in the town of Northfield when a group of communities got together to form or to regionalize. And many of you probably know that the objective in what we're trying to do is regionalize. Since I've been your sheriff, I think the chief would say that all the communities work very closely together. My concern here is this vehicle is not just for the city of Concord. I'm a member of the SOU. We have 20 other communities that will be serviced by this vehicle. I understand the passions in the room. I respect everybody's opinion. However, this vehicle will also serve, you've heard a lot about police officers, but it serves to take citizens, innocent citizens out of harm's way as well. It is a tool like the fire chief who we saw here tonight uses a fire truck or a rescue truck. It is a tool in the toolbox that we have. I understand that it looks rough, and probably the term peacekeeper would have been much nicer than the term Bearcat, but if you're looking for the language. But it inherently, it services, as Chief Duvall told you, 150,000 citizens in Merrimack County, and I would ask you to support this request. It will not only benefit the city of Concord, it will benefit the citizens, 150,000 of those citizens, and I'd be glad to take any questions.
Thank you, Sheriff. Are there any questions from the council? Yes?
I don't have a question, but I just want to take this opportunity to thank the sheriff for the work he does for the county. We're very fortunate to have you as our sheriff.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm probably going to butcher this last name. Carla Gericke? I can't read it. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Thank you.
What town is she from?
She did not write it on her card. Christopher Gronsky, I believe it is.
Thank you for this forum. My name is Christopher Gronsky. I live in Wolfboro, New Hampshire. I'm concerned about the, that was a great point about the budget of the federal government, which they're broke. They don't really have this money to give, but the thing I'm concerned about is the militarizing of the local police force. The Constitution says in Article, New Hampshire Constitution says that in Article 25 that the standing armies are dangerous to liberty and ought not to be raised or kept up without the consent of the legislature. And I think that the more and more we have local law enforcement moving in a military fashion, we're going to be creating a standing army, and they're all cooperating with each other, and we're going to be moving into a place in which it's going to be unhealthy for us, because the relationship with Homeland Security, which the USA Patriot Act is unconstitutional, it brings everything together. What you may not be considering is, with the grant, you're going to get all the federal regulations, and you're going to bring the federal government into the state, and that's the harm that will come to the people of New Hampshire. So I'd like you to not support this grant.
Thank you, Mr. Gronsky. Kim Murdoch.
Good evening. I will try to keep it really brief. In the event I miss anything, I do have copies for all of you and for Janice as well. My name is Kim Murdoch. I was born here. We're raising our kids here. I pay my taxes here, and I vote here. And I also own a business here. Tonight, though, I am here on behalf of the Concord Public Safety Foundation. The all-volunteer nonprofit Concord Public Safety Foundation was incorporated in May 2011 with a three-part mission to obtain and grant funding for public safety initiatives, to advocate for measures to strengthen public safety, and to assist with communicating public safety messaging. The Concord Public Safety Foundation's Board of Directors is very aware of the controversy around the specifics of the Bearcat grant application. Tonight's testimony is solely to ask for your support of public safety in our community by voting to accept grant funding for the acquisition of the Bearcat. The Public Safety Foundation supports the Bearcat requested by the Concord Police Department because it will be used to protect public safety staff, to protect citizens, and to remove injured people from lethal scenarios. Certainly the Chief had mentioned the tragic Christmas 2012 incident in upstate New York where firefighters were fired upon when they were responding. And in that situation, I understand approximately 30 residents were rescued. Also, on the issue of the acquisition of a Bearcat turning the Concord Police Department into a military organization, I think that most residents weren't aware that it's been almost a decade that we've had a comparable, although very aged, vehicle in the Peacekeeper. It's 32 years old, but it's been in Concord for almost 10 years. And in that time, I think folks would be hard-pressed to say that the Concord Police Department has turned into a military organization.
So I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up.
Absolutely, I will wrap up. So,
Again, on behalf of Concord Public Safety Foundation, whose mission includes advocacy for measures to strengthen public safety in this community, I ask you to protect our public safety by accepting the grant funds, and would just say very, very quickly, personally, I've worked with the Concord Police Department on behalf of many nonprofits for well over 5 years and have always found them to be professional, to be attuned to community needs, and to be unwaveringly committed to public safety. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Representative J.R. Holt.
Thank you, Your Honor. Briefly, may I actually show something on the screen?
You can if it's within your time limit. If you can figure out, I don't know if you can. I'll tell you what, how about we have somebody else testify while you're looking up?
That'd be great.
Okay. Teresa Earl. Teresa Earl.
My name's Teresa Earl. How should one respond when they're called a domestic terrorist? Yeah, I've heard Chief Duvall state that he chose his words poorly, but as the chief of police who filled out this application, I have to wonder if somebody who fills out an application with such disregard for the people that he's targeting in his application, whether he ought to be making decisions about how to use military weapons. As both an occupier, a free stater, and also a damn hippie, the last thing I would ever be referred to is a domestic terrorist. And in fact, Occupy New Hampshire was told that we were too polite. So imagine my surprise when I read that I am considered a domestic terrorist, that my friends all throughout this room, in both Occupy and the Free State Project, or people who are just too scared to speak out, maybe because of this military-industrial complex that we have running this country, were all called terrorists. I've never even raised a fist to a person in my life. I would never do that. Yet here I stand. And today I get here. And suddenly, it's a rescue vehicle. This armored truck is a rescue vehicle all of a sudden. I would strongly suggest that rather than getting a grant for $300,000 to get a tank, that maybe you invest it in some community building, some nonviolent communication strategies, and some de-escalation techniques for your police officers. Because none of these people have ever posed a daily threat to this city or to this state. Yet we are constantly being targeted by it. That's all I have to say unless anybody has a question.
Any questions? Councilor Nye.
Miss, where are you from?
I live in Concord, New Hampshire, and I work in Concord.
Thank you very much. Representative, do you still need more time?
No.
Okay.
Can I speak from here? Is this microphone
on? Yeah, that's fine.
So I apologize, Representative Hull, Southern Dunbar, I apologize for the lack of a presentation on the spot. I want to talk about policy and police because the chief who took over Washington, D.C., a very crime-ridden city, took a very different approach than arming its officers with tanks, okay? She has turned the city around because she went after, how do we get the police involved with the citizens, okay? The way to solve this problem is not to put tanks on the streets in the city of Concord, okay? But it's to get the officers in the streets involved with the citizens. I would politely ask that you turn down this application and start getting the chief and the other officers to get involved with the citizens of the city.
Thank you very much. Well said. Any questions?
I do. Could you give me a definition of a tank?
Sure.
Your definition of a tank.
Yeah, in this case, it's an armored personnel carrier. Let's call the Bearcat what it is. It's an attack truck. Okay, it doesn't have tracks. Okay, it has tires, but it's designed to withstand a 50 caliber bullet. Okay, much like a tank would.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Representative Emily Sandley.
And I have to adjust the mic just like I do in my house. My name's Emily Sandblade. I'd like to say hello to my fellow representatives, and I appreciate you hearing me tonight. During the last 2 years, I and a number of other Free Staters have handed out quite a few bags of food to people in Concord, people who have a very hard time making ends meet, And when you go in their apartments or their houses, their cupboards are pretty bare. And what we've done over the last, Free Stater Community has done over the last 2 years, is make sure that for holidays, a lot of these people are fed. We try to be sensitive about what we give out to people. We try to pay attention to their dietary needs and things like that. So when we find out that we're being labeled domestic terrorist and that people are using this as an excuse to militarize the police, it sounds like to me that it's a very good way for people on this council and for the police chief to say, no good deed goes unpunished. This military vehicle may be just a tool, but then our government also insists on calling drones and nuclear weapons tools. And that doesn't make them something that you necessarily want to use on your civilian population. You don't want to use it on a civilian population that's part of your community, and you don't want to use it on a civilian population that is nonviolent and peaceable. And yet that's what we're talking about. And so I think, thank you, sir. I think that at this point, that this application should be withdrawn because it's an application made under false pretenses. And it needs to be very clear that there's not a political motivation for acquiring this particular instrument.
Thank you very much. Questions? I'm sorry, Representative, you have a question.
Yes.
Councilor Nye.
Miss, where are you from?
I'm sorry.
Where are you from, please?
I'm from Manchester.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm sorry.
One more question. I do understand, it's regrettable, pretense by saying it's regrettable that the Free Staters were mentioned in the application, and I think that was a mistake, and I think that's been acknowledged. But my question to you is, do you think there are circumstances within the city of Concord where this piece of equipment would be useful? And as you think about that, as a follow-up, I ask that because I see everyone out here has responded because your group has been singled out, and I understand why you feel singled out. I would be too. But do you think there's a legitimate use for that piece of equipment in Concord?
Yes, sir, there is a legitimate use. If the United States was say, invaded by some foreign power, I don't think that it would be unrealistic that the police department trot that out and defend the U.S. But other than that, it's a lot harder to see that, and it's much harder to see the use of military equipment against civilians.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Representative.
Thank you.
Jim McConaughey.
Thank you. I'm Jim McConaughey, and I live in Concord's popular South End, and I really have a kind of single issue here. I'm glad Pam Ian brought up the federal deficit because people's eyes, glaze over sort of instantly. But it's true. Every time the Department of Homeland Security gives away one of these Bearcats, they add another $250,000 or so to the federal deficit. And if you care about that, you start doing something about it at this level. My main issue with this project is that it's part of this, what I would call this addiction to the federal handout, and this process that's in place that distorts your planning and your decision making and your setting of priorities. If the money is coming from some department of the federal government, then it doesn't need the kind of scrutiny that it would get if it came from the taxpayers in the city of Concord. And I think the chief made his own point here tonight, that he would not come to you and ask you, the citizens of Concord, to pay $250,000 for this machine. So I think you need to build some kind of process into your decision making, this grant for swiftwater rescue and everything else that you get, so that you actually look at that money that's coming from the federal government as if it were your own money, as if it were coming out of the pockets of your own citizens. And I would like to see this council really take some leadership in this, and to tell the people of the rest of the United States that we're not going to ask them to help pay for, frankly, a semi-military device which has about as much utility here, I think, as probably a nuclear submarine.
There is no counting. It was a good line, but
I only use one. I'll take.
Are there any questions? Councilor Crowley?
Thank you, Your Honor. The city of Nashua paid for theirs with drug seizure money. That would be acceptable?
Well, I don't know. Is it their drug seizure money?
It was money
I don't know. How important is something? You voted to buy a big conservation easement tonight that you spent years evaluating because you believed it was important to the citizens of the state. And that's the kind of thoughtful process that should go into any kind of spending of taxpayers' dollars. And that's not what you're doing with this Bearcat machine. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the extra.
You're welcome. We didn't vote on the property yet, but thanks for coming on. Irina Goddard. Irina, do you mind if they hook up a computer while you're testifying? Thank you.
Okay, my name is Irina Goddard, and for the record, I live at 15 Reddington Road in Concord. I come to you today with a unique perspective and a serious warning about what this Bearcat vehicle represents and why we need to stop it now. As you can tell from my accent, I was not born in the United States. I was born in communist Czechoslovakia, and I went to school in a town called Ostrava. I have fond memories of this rather picturesque town picking cherries with my grandparents. In school, we would address all of our teachers by Sodrushka Učitelka, which translates into comrade teacher. From our earliest school years, differentiation and creativity of any kind was discouraged. There was no freedom of speech. Peaceful and skeptical discussion of government initiatives among citizens was brutally stopped. Government preached either through schools, law, or through law enforcement. This was all carefully and centrally controlled and manipulated from Moscow. The Soviet Union wanted to ensure that everyone in Russia, Ukraine, Poland, Romania, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and other sovereign satellite countries was in line with the policies and initiatives of those in power. They bribed and encouraged everything that's necessary to protect the people. Everyone had to adhere to powerful bureaucrats. We were told they knew best. We were told that it was for the general good. We now know the terror that was applied to those who were brave enough to question the Communist Party. I am deeply troubled that in America, in the sovereign state of New Hampshire, in the capital city of Concord, that a war is being waged on the First Amendment, the freedom of speech. Concord Police has explicitly stated this intent on the Bearcat application by identifying nonviolent but vocal groups that engage in peaceful and skeptical discussion about government initiatives. Concord Police is arguing that a military vehicle is needed to combat these nonviolent groups. I do want this deadly intimidation force of a military vehicle. I do not want this deadly intimidation force of military vehicle to suppress free speech. Very much like how it was done with tanks in communist Czechoslovakia. How far is this from police asking for your papers from citizens gathering in the streets? Oh, I'm sorry, I meant to say, how far is it from the police asking for ID from citizens gathering in the streets?
I have to ask you to wrap up.
The Concord local government have approved this war on the First Amendment. How you ask? By signing off on the application, by reading it thoughtfully. Specifically, Thomas Aspel, John Duvall, Brian LeBrun. However, I must know that all of these positions are appointed.
Sorry, I see you're moving to page 2 while you're waiting.
Just one more line.
Sorry.
Well, I have one thing to ask. Have you lived in a communist state? Well, I have.
My grandparents. Thank you very much.
I have a copy.
Yeah, you can get that.
And I have a question.
There's a question.
Yes. And in Czechoslovakia, would you have been allowed to testify in front of judges?
No, we have not.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Okay, Representative Lambert.
I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity to speak tonight. Like you all, I work in Concord. I'm a representative. I represent Hillsborough 44, the people of Manchester, the people of Litchfield, and ultimately because of the committees that I'm on, I represent the people of the entire state. Like you, to be sworn into office, I raised my right hand and I took an oath, and that oath was to uphold and defend the Constitution of the state of New Hampshire and of the United States of America. In front of the State House, where I get to work, there's a video on YouTube, and you can watch it at any time. It's a member of the Concord Police Department tasing a citizen who was out engaging in a discussion about his right to protest in New Hampshire, something referenced in your Bearcat application. And when he was leaving, he was detained and tased. If anybody wants to determine whether or not, what that situation looks like, you should watch a video in full length and make a decision as to whether or not they have concerns about police being well-intentioned. But sometimes these situations appear a little out of control. You began your meeting tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance, and you used the words, "And to the republic for which it stands." That republic is the one that guarantees the right and safety of citizens. I spent 6 years as a selectman, and I understand the trade-offs of protecting our staff, protecting our citizens, and protecting the establishment of government. The thing that we never talk about is the way the people feel when the question comes up. What about us? And should we and do we feel safe? The Department of Homeland Security, for which you will have applied for a grant and will get it. I know, I'm almost done. The Department of Homeland Security, for which you applied for this grant, has been noted for security theater. I encourage you all to take a look at the video, which is available on on Netflix, called "Please Remove Your Shoes." I've offered copies of it to every member of the State House already, and have copies for anyone who contacts me. However, it demonstrates how we as a nation over the last decade have begun to engage in security theater and to make it so that people feel scared rather than the people feel safe. The people who are about to fund this grant, and I don't mean the public of the United States, manage an agency that makes sure that you feel safe every time you go to board an airplane. And during their own investigations, they removed a bottle of water from a bag that their own test team had a bomb in. They took out a bottle of water and they put a bomb in an airplane. We need to make sure we're measuring the right objectives, and that is that the people feel like the government is responding to them. Listen to the people who are here.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Carl Appleby. Carl Appleby. Samantha Kleinberg.
I'll make this quick. I have written testimony, but I'll just give it to you. My name is Samantha Kleinberg. I'm a Concord lifer. I was born in Concord Hospital. And I don't take a personal offense to you calling free staters terrorists. I take a personal offense to you calling anybody a terrorist. I know you people didn't, but it's on the application. I know you're sick of it. You're going to hear it over and over again. Sorry, it's the application that you're approving. So it is what it is, and it's fraudulent. And if you vote for it, you're voting for a fraud. That's all. Real quick, if I were to apply for a federal subsidy for myself, such as maybe say TANF or something, which I don't need, but if I were to apply for it and I embellish the application, I'm really, really very sure that I would be going to jail, just to put it out there. Lastly, I just want to talk to you about integrity. And again, I'm a lifer, and once upon a time, I thought the police were there to help me. I mean, rude awakening, that's all I have to say, is that if our chief of police embellished an application, how are we supposed to believe that the department that he represents themselves in the courts honestly? It goes down, it trickles down. If your chief is not honest, why would his subordinates be honest? Why am I to believe that they have integrity in our courts and with people that they consider criminals? It's just a question. That's my testimony about that.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
And I'm sorry, I'm barefoot.
That's right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Jesse Mertz. Jesse Mertz. Sandra Pierce.
I think that's Pierre.
I'm sorry, Pierre.
I relinquished my time to the first speaker, Carla Gericke.
Well, that's very nice of you to be honest. Thank you very much. Craig Green.
Hi, I'm Craig Green. I live at 20 Maple Street in Concord. I moved here a couple of years ago from the New London area, and I really love Concord because of the community spirit that everyone has, the way that people participate in my neighborhood and helping the neighborhood run. And I think this is a bad idea, and it's for the simple reason that public safety is there to make people feel safe. And as you can see from the people gathered here, and we're not all Free Staters, I'm not a Free Stater, we don't feel safe. We won't feel safe with this Bearcat. You're making us feel less safe. And that's not the goal of public safety. In my neighborhood, everyone I talk to, every single person is made afraid by this big thing, whatever we're going to call it. People with guns are inside of it, even if it has no guns on it. And it's not good to make people afraid. That's not a way to help community. And so I ask you, very heartfelt, that if you can't vote against it this time, at least delay your vote and get some more input. Have a little more thought. I'm sure a lot of thought has gone into it. But a little more discussion, if you could. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wait, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There's a question for you. Councilor Don.
Thank you, Your Honor. You saw the chief's presentation.
Yes.
And the old vehicle and the new vehicle.
Yes.
I guess my question was, were you feeling safe up until you saw this Bearcat, or because there was an armored vehicle before, so were you feeling unsafe with that one as well?
Well, one really interesting thing about this entire phenomenon is it's revealed that we have an armored vehicle in Concord, and that's actually made my neighbors feel more unsafe. Now, there's a difference. Saturday night I was in Bicentennial Square with some friends, and some policemen bicycled through. And there's the usual, like, oh, policemen, right? But then one of the person who was sitting there drinking said, no, they're okay. They come through on their beat. They walk their beat. And the difference between an armored vehicle and walking your beat is the difference between community policing and the military. I mean, not to push the term too far. And I think we've got to respect community policing and really advocate for that. And I think that's what a lot of folks are trying to do here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Paula Wormy. Evening, welcome.
Hi, I'm Paula Worma, and I live in Boscawen. That's okay. Nobody gets it right. I am against the Bearcat. I am affiliated with the Free State. I've lived in New Hampshire for 25 years. We were very excited when they voted to come to our state and help us out. Because I'm affiliated, I was deeply and personally offended. I do all of my shopping in Concord. I come here pretty frequently. As you can imagine, we don't have a lot of retail in Boscawen. I feel a lot different about coming to Concord. I'm always looking out for police cars. And it's because I've been labeled a terrorist. I've never been anything like a terrorist. I was pulled over last time by a Concord policeman who said, your inspection sticker is expired. There's no reason for this. The problem with the Bearcat, again, is the application. If you approve this application for the Bearcat, you are endorsing what was said in the application. I don't trust Mr. Duvall to properly use the Bearcat, since he has stated publicly on the exchange that he intended to use it for political protest. That is suppression of political speech. It is unconstitutional. I also don't, I don't feel that he has the right idea, and because he lied, I worry about him being the person in charge of deploying this vehicle. Unfortunately, you know, I'm one of the communities that's going to have to pay for the upkeep, and I don't want to pay for the upkeep if Chief Duval is involved in deploying it in the area of Concord. This is the state capital. It is a free speech city.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? There is. Councilor Grady Sexton.
Thank you, Your Honor. Attorney Mormont, are you aware of any instances when the 32-year-old peacekeeper that we currently have in Concord has been used to violating civil rights?
No, I'm not. So why did the chief say that? He needs to withdraw that application. He needs to resubmit it with whatever reasons he wants to use it. And if the federal government wants to approve it on that basis, that's fine. He doesn't have to manufacture domestic terrorists in order to get federal funds. I don't want the Bearcat personally. I don't think I'm going to be able to stop it. But certainly accepting it on the basis that we have potentially domestic terrorists in our state, when there are a whole bunch of peace-loving people behind me, and many more that didn't come to the hearing, is wrong. It's absolutely wrong, and, you know, again, if the chief is willing to lie there, what is he willing to do to get the vehicle in use? Who is he going to hurt?
Thank you. Any other questions, Noel? Thank you very much. Next up, we have, well, I actually been skipping this card because there's no name on it. But they're here representing humanity, so I can't pass this. So if you're the one that put, I'm representing humanity, and you want 90 seconds, so I'm going to give it to you. That counts as part of your 90 seconds.
That's all right, I ran over here, heard this was going on, so I just needed to get a quick thing.
Thank you very much. What's your name, sir, and where are you from?
Humanities. Pete Martino from Epsom.
Thank you.
You don't need this. You really don't. I was a colonel, I'm a retired colonel in the Marine Corps. I saw a sign back there that said, we want more Mayberry and less Fallujah. And I spent a year in Fallujah. And you know what? When I first got there, I didn't have armored Humvees, and I traveled over 10,000 miles over there. And sometimes you got to deal with and go with what you have. And so that's part of the job, for one. The second thing is, when I was in Iraq, I was in charge, I was the Ministry of Defense coordinator. My job was to man, train, and equip the Iraqi army in Al-Anbar, Najaf, Karbala, and northern Babia provinces. And I can tell you right now, well, somebody had the great idea to get rid of the Iraqi army, so when we rebuilt it, we did everything we could to make it as strong as possible. And I'll tell you right now, Homeland Security would kick their butts in a week. What's happening here is we're building a domestic military because it's unlawful or unconstitutional to use American troops on American soil. So what we're doing is we're building a military. My best friend, who's a SWAT officer in Nashua, who came to Iraq with me to train the Iraqi police, sent me an email with a picture of him in the media on the streets of Watertown, Mass, wearing the exact same combat gear that we had in Iraq, only it was a different color. And the way we do things in the military is called task organization. You take a command and then you attach units to it in order to accomplish the mission. What's happening is Homeland Security is pre-staging gear, equipment, consistent. What they're trying to do is use standardized vehicles, standardized equipment. I saw a picture in the Boston Globe during the marathon bombing where there was a state police officer, actually there were two officers, they both had identical helmets, flak jackets, weapons, everything I wore in Iraq, only it was all blue. The officer on one side had a big patch on his back that said Massachusetts State Police. Another officer next to him, his patch said Boston Police. And so what we're doing here, and let's not kid about it, we're building a domestic army and we're shrinking the military because the government is afraid of its own citizens. The last time more than 10 terrorists were in the same place at one time was September 11th, and all these vehicles in the world wouldn't have prevented it, nor would it have helped anybody. So I don't know where we're going to use this many vehicles and this many troops. Concord is just one little cog in the wheel. We're building an army over here, and I can't believe that people aren't seeing it. Is everybody blind? That's all. I'll take that.
passionate issue, but if you please, for the first time, I'm asking you not to boo or clap one way or the other.
I'll take any questions.
Any questions? Thank
My
you.
wife always told my kids there's always free cheese in the mousetrap.
All right, Ray Fitzgerald.
Can I use my time to Greg?
How do you know he's going to use all his time?
No.
Let's see. Let's give him a little credit first. Mr. Fitzgerald, you can state your name and where you're from.
I'm Gray Fitzgerald. I live at 28 Washington Street here in Concord. And I have been trying to adjust what I want to say here tonight. Quite frankly, with this issue, I was totally asleep about it. I hardly knew what a Bearcat, I didn't know what a Bearcat was until a friend asked me, and then I found out that it is, and when I read about it, then I read this article from the application and was shocked to realize that the justification for the Bearcat, part of it was the Occupy New Hampshire movement. And all of a sudden I woke up. I wasn't deeply involved in that. I was marginally involved in it. But to find that I was a threat, a public threat, a daily threat, I was really shocked. And it's more disconcerting because according to its website, the Occupy movement in New Hampshire no longer exists in an organized, functioning way. And so then this application is using a non-functioning organization to justify its application. So for me then, if that's the case, when you're looking at the organization listed was never violent and presently is not functioning, then the current rationale for obtaining a Bearcat is invalid from my perspective. Let's see, if I'm going to use Will's time, how much
What's Will's last name so I can take his card out?
Hopkins.
All right, keep on going.
All right, I'll do one more paragraph here. Some of us are concerned about the militarization of our police force. One website contrasts the difference between the creeds of the military and the police. It states that the military unit's mission is to deploy, engage, and then destroy the enemies of the United States of America in close combat. That's the soldier's creed. The police creed, as some other people have said here tonight, is to protect and to serve. And so our understanding is that the training for this Bearcat comes from the military. And so with training from the military and the use of the Bearcat, we're concerned that it's easy for the military creed of conduct to start overcoming the police creed of conduct. And that concern is heightened when we look at what the acronym for Bearcat stands for. The acronym stands for Ballistic Engineered Armored Response Counter Attack Truck. It was presented here tonight as a rescue truck. I hope that it's used that way. But it's designed to be a military attack vehicle to destroy the enemy. And so, given that, since a number of us here have been designated the enemy, we have some concern about that. So, I think that's where I will end. But I do appreciate your time. I do appreciate being able to be heard here. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Could I try, do you mind if I just kind of try something a little different? That was excellent testimony. So based on what you're saying and based on what Carla was saying, there's a lot of concern. But one of the basic concerns is the identification of the three parties related to in the application. It being labeled domestic terrorists. That's part of it. There's other parts of it, because I think that there's two perspectives. The city and the organization that it belongs to is trying to replace an existing vehicle. However, you don't want it to be used or identified to be used on 3 entities that are not domestic terrorists in any way, terrorists in any way. So Carla had an idea, which was, correct me if I'm wrong, she had an idea which was, well, what if the language related to the domestic terrorist piece and the labeling of those 3 organizations was removed from the application, and that application was resubmitted, and if it floated on its own, it floated on its own. If it didn't float on its own, then the feds could take the money and say, is that reasonably close to what you were saying? So that way no organization is identified, that way there's no stigma related to any organization, any of the people who belong to it or lived with it, and whether they've been 25 years or not. So when I talked to the Chief Duval about this after Carla had sent me several emails with some good ideas, and he sent a letter to Department of Safety. And the Department of Safety, with the recommendation that we remove all the references to the 3 parties and the labeling of domestic terrorists to any of those parties, and would they consider the application again and determine whether or not the funding would still be appropriate. So they did. And they sent us a letter that said, yes, we'll accept your amendment to that application, removing reference to all those parties and the label of anybody as a domestic terrorist in any way. So it'll be permanently stricken, and this new amendment would be in the file. And based on the findings of the rest of the application standing on its own, you're still eligible for the grant. Does that sound like a reasonable accommodation that allows the city to move forward and the organization to move forward and replace a vehicle? I haven't heard one person testify in terms of, let me go.
It's all one big question,
I'm just
right?
doing this. I haven't heard one testify that the city of Concord acts in any way other than using great community policing standards. So it's really the concern that things will change and it'll happen differently. Yes, that was, guys, see that. So does that sound like a reasonable, if the Department of Safety is saying, well, if you remove those, we don't believe that reference is important. It's not important to us. The city and the other parts of the organization of Pipers don't believe it's important to us. We don't believe it's, I'll definitively state, I don't believe any of those 3 groups are domestic terrorists. When I saw the application, I didn't read it that way, but I can see how other people could read it that way. That's what I'm recommending to the City Council, and why not move it forward and replace that vehicle? Manchester has one. I didn't see an uproar in Manchester when Manchester went to buy one.
They did it in secret.
Yeah. So what does that teach? What does that teach government, right?
Do it in secret.
Yeah. So we don't do that. We don't do that. Right. So and same thing with Nashua. I saw it in Keene. It's probably the only place I've actually seen it. So
All right, actually,
I want to stop and maybe take a
yeah, actually, could you come up here? You can go, being the chair, I can go out of order. Just because really he was responding to your questions more than yours, Mr. Fitzgerald, if that's okay. So really those are questions responding to your input.
And I don't mind sitting here for another 5 hours of public testimony, but I think if we can come to some sort of understanding that works for you and works for us.
I mean, I think this is a step, a great step in the right direction. It does address, obviously, some of our concerns as an organization. I think the 2 issues that would still concern me, well, first of all, I would like to read it before I agree to anything. But also, I think to the point of some of the people who testified here with regard to the question of integrity, and the question of, is Chief Duval, who wrote this grant, he admits to writing it, he has twice said he takes full responsibility for it. I think the question then becomes whether he is someone we want in public office getting this replacement vehicle.
He is someone you want in public office. He truly believes in community policing. He works for me. And I'll make sure. He's the guy who decided we're going to have bicycles going down the street. He's the guy who decided we're going to have people walking through the downtown. And if you talk to the people who frequent Eagle Square and Bicentennial Square, he'll be the one who tells you that those are the folks, the reason that those folks are down there now and meeting with the shop owners and talking to them is Chief Duval.
Well, I respectfully disagree.
What I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to give you a minute to look at that. Any questions for Mr. Fitzgerald?
Could I respond to that?
Yes, you can, because you did ask a question. Go right ahead.
I don't know what went on behind the scenes in making this application, or what has happened here with you. But when I read those 3 sentences, it's like it seems like to me that there hasn't been the proper thought and consideration going into this application in the first place. And so it makes me very uneasy about it. It makes me feel like that some of these things that we're concerned about the cost, about the militarization, have not been considered properly. And it makes me afraid that it's going to be creeping from a military code of conduct to, from a police code of conduct to a military code of conduct. It doesn't engender confidence. So that's.
Thank you very much. Okay. Next up, Seth Hipple. And I just want to state for the record, normally the council would be taking a break at this point. I'm not going to take a break just so the testimony can continue. But I say that out loud just in case you do see some councils leaving the room just for a second or two. Don't be offended. We're just going to keep on going without a break. But if any of the councilors feel like they need to use the facilities for a second, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Sinclair, members of the council. My name is Seth Hipple. I live in Concord. I live at 45 Concord Street. I'm also a small business owner. My business is in the Ralph Marketplace building and puts food on the table for 4 families here in Concord. I also was concerned with the wording of the application, and it was interesting when I listened to Chief Duvall on the exchange. He said, well, we're more concerned with people who would infiltrate these groups and and do terrorist activity. But that's not what the application said. The application actually said that they present daily challenges. And I want to know what happened last Wednesday where Chief Duvall needed a Bearcat and didn't have one. I think that Mr. Spell's comments were very helpful, and I hope that if the council feels that this needs to be approved, that the application, not just to the Department of Safety, but also to the Department of Homeland Security, can be amended to clarify that I don't think these statements, frankly, were just false. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Oh, there a question.
Just a quick question. What business did you say you operated downtown?
Yes, it is the law offices of Martin and Hepple. It's my law firm.
Christine Bonser, maybe?
Bonser, and I yielded my time to Carla Gericke of the Free State Project.
Okay. Well, somebody else did too, so I'll give you the opportunity because somebody else already yielded, so I'm not going to take 2 people's time for that.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for hearing our testimony on this really important issue for the area. A lot of people have already said a lot of the things that I wanted to say, but I just want to kind of point out that I'm a Free State Project participant. I signed the move to move over 10 years ago with my husband because we're from Southern California, San Diego natives, and we wanted to come to a place that was where we did feel safe and where we weren't feeling like there's a policeman behind me. Is he going to have unfounded suspicions or be bored and pull me over because he doesn't like the way my car looks? And we decided to leave California for that very reason, because we wanted to live near our neighbors and take part in our community. I'm a wife, a mom, and a business owner. My husband and I brought both of our businesses here. We've brought our family, our businesses, our money, and our charity here. We want to share that with the community. We want to be a part here. And when we heard that we were named, again, as you've heard a lot, this is an issue, that we were named as domestic terrorists, it kind of shook us all to the core, because we're very happy people who want to help our neighbors. I fear very much that having a ballistic engineered armored response counterattack truck in our backyard and the militarization of our peace officers will shift the attitude of police, city, and state officials to domination rather than a peaceful interaction between parties. between neighbors. And a fraudulent claim on any grant request, let alone to the DHS for a Bearcat, would be met with severe punishment for anyone that doesn't have the cloak of the government to protect them.
Ms. Pelcher, that spoke to save your time. Councilor Key, you have a question?
Point of order. I find it distracting having a sidebar going up here in front of council.
Mr. Manager, if we hold on 1 second, please.
I just find it inappropriate that something's going up here. It seems like there's a side deal going on that nobody's privy to. So
When Mayor Pro Tem St. Larry returns, we'll take a 2-minute break.
I think it's more appropriate. Thank you.
Any other questions?
May I just conclude?
10 seconds, please.
I just would like to say that the City of Concord and all of its employees should be held to the same caliber of behavior as the rest of society. Lying on purpose is not acceptable behavior, especially when it puts the livelihoods of so many people and families at risk. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more questions?
And you quickly, I'm sorry, did you say where you live currently?
Currently I live in Northwood. I do all of my grocery shopping in Concord, and I bank in Pittsfield.
30 seconds.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Laurel Leising. Well, if you can mention your name and where you live, please.
Thank you for having me. I also live at 45 Concord Street in Concord, and while I am not strictly a Free Stater, these are my friends and these are my family. I have never felt more at home in New Hampshire, and I have never been helped more than I have been in New Hampshire. I have achieved more since I moved here in the last 3 years than anywhere else, and I feel like that's because we take care of our own. We can defend ourselves. If this application were for, say, a pickup truck or a van in which we could transport the same number of people, I wouldn't have as much of a problem with it. But when there are gun portals in the side of this vehicle, that makes me feel a little bit unnerved. I lived in New Orleans for 2 years before living here, and I felt like my life was constantly in danger. Not because of my fellow citizens, but because the police force was massively corrupt, and I do not want to see that here. I work in an industry where I make people feel better about themselves. I'm an esthetician. I make them look better. I make them feel more confident. I do relaxing services for people. And if I am associated with an organization that is labeled as terrorist, then I am a terrorist. If giving someone a hand massage is terrorist activity, then I think we really need to take a look at our priorities. That's all.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions? Thank you very much, Ms. Leising.
Christopher Booth.
My name is Christopher Booth, and I went to Concord High School here and lived in New Hampshire most of my life. I'm very concerned about the direction that the police force would take should they get a vehicle like this. And I think that it would set a good example if Concord said, no thanks, we'll help reduce the national deficit by not accepting this grant. I hope that that's the direction that Concord would take. Should Concord get this vehicle, it's not going to be used appropriately. I can categorically tell you that. It's going to be brought out for parades to show to kids. They indicate that that's a good thing. That's not a good thing. If you look at how Manchester used their vehicle yesterday, they had a shooting and a suicide. Everybody was dead. And yet they show up with their vehicle and people pointing rifles at the building. This is a totally inappropriate police response. Concord's going to do the same thing. Concord's going to send this vehicle out to towns like Canterbury, where I grew up. There is no crime in New Hampshire that
that deserves the militarization of the police department like that. Concord has about one murder every 2 years. It's a town that we roll up the sidewalks at 5 o'clock. This is just not an appropriate vehicle, and I hope that Concord does do the right thing and say no thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Booth. There's a question. Councilor Sherlock.
Mr. Booth, nice to see you again. You mentioned that if the police department and the compact required this vehicle, that it would be not used appropriately. Did you feel that they use the peacekeeper this vehicle is replacing, that they use that in an inappropriate manner as well?
I have no knowledge about how the peacekeeper has ever been used, but I can categorically say that the Bearcat would not be used appropriately. Absolutely. I mean, the police talk about responding to barricade hostages situations. Well, I am certain that people have been barricading them and taking hostages for 1,000 years. And people have, in society, have been able to respond to that type of situation long before these tank-like vehicles were invented. Technology does not solve crime. When you look at the causes of crime, and what's a crime anyway? A crime is somebody breaking the law. Well, the only thing that makes it a crime is because you passed a law against it anyway. I mean, 2,000 years ago, there were 10 ways that you could be put to death. 8 of those today are not even crimes.
So that's a no.
Was that?
That's a no. Good question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much. Brian Blackman. Brian Blackman.
I only have 1 minute and a half, I guess, so I really can't get into everything I wanted to get into. Part of my problems with some of the lies in the application, I would...
Actually, could you sit down first? Sure. Introduce yourself and state your name.
My name is Brian Blackman. I live in Ward 4, and I own a business here in Concord, and I have a problem with some of the lies in the application. I would direct your attention to number 33, fraud. I'd read that before you vote yes. Some of these things are very pink in the application here, and I know I only have a limited amount of time. Some of them seem very self-serving. The Department of Homeland Security requires all agencies to comply with MIMS for a tactical team to be in compliance with NIMS and qualify as a Type 2 team. So basically, the Concord area SWAT team wants to be a Homeland Security Type 2 SWAT team. That's self-serving. That's not people-serving. Chief also stated it took 3 hours to get the response to his other situation. I believe they called Belknap County. I talked to the captain over at the SWAT team of the state police the other day, and he was a little shocked. He said, wow, we have a Lenco. We could have been there in a whole lot shorter than 3 hours. And they said that the state police are available for every community in the state. Well, if we have a Lenco up on Hazen Drive, why do we need a new one for the city of Concord? Because it's the newest model. And it's the newest model that, according to letter K, will be the only one in the region and readily available for mutual aid requests and assistance. And I'm assuming that's outside of 20 towns that the state police could already handle from Hazen Drive. And the chief has also said he needs protection from 50 caliber rounds. In case any of you don't know what a 50 caliber round is, I'd like to show you. It's called an anti-aircraft round. And it's this big one right over here. Okay, that takes down planes and big armored vehicles and stuff like that. It's a military round, a 50 caliber round. And I just want to let you know that Carla Gericke used this little tiny one right here. Okay, this is a 223. Carla Gericke used this. The chief wants protection from that big one down on the end. Okay. The average time for the Bearcat to respond to a unit, even if it's in Concord, is 15 to 20 minutes. That's not going to save the life of any officer responding to a scene, because the average bulletproof vest will do this to a rifle round. It goes through them. So unless the department is going to spend $256,000 on Type 4 level body armor for individual officers, I think it's a whole waste of money to get a Bearcat when you're thinking about protection of officers' lives. Because my little bad artwork down here, again, there's 8 guys, little blue dots here. There's 8 guys in a Bearcat. They have to get out of that Bearcat at some point to get the bad guy. They need body armor to do that. Or you can spend that kind of money and have 50 officers protected properly to go after the one bad guy. So if you're thinking about spending $258,000, I would rather protect 50 people than 8.
Thank you, Mr. Rankin. Is that a standard issue?
This is the standard level
What is
3A.
that, an insert that goes in between the black part of the vest?
Yeah, this is just the insert that goes in there. That was actually mine when I worked for the state.
So what are you suggesting?
Well,
Better armored vests?
Well, if I were wanting to protect my officers and having them not be able to go up a driveway because there's shooting going on and waiting for a vehicle for however long and having citizens be in danger, I would think the city or the police might want to look at having level 4 body armor in every cruiser in town.
What do they have now?
Most officers wear level 3A vests. That's generally what most of
What's
them
the
have.
cost of a level 4 vest?
Level 4 vest, conservatively, about $3,000 to $4,000. You can get a level 4 body armor.
It's about the same price as the level 3.
No. The level 3 is about $800. Level 3A. The level 3, there's a difference. There's 3A, and level 4. Level 3A is actually less protective than the level 3. The level 3A is what most officers wear.
Any other questions from the council? Thank you very much. Next is Tim Bauman.
Good evening. I'm Tim Bauman. I live up on the Primrose Drive up in Pennacook, and Jennifer Kretovic is my counselor, and Steve Sherlock, I believe, is my rep. I think most everyone else has covered, a lot of the issues in regards to the particular groups being pointed out, and it seems there may be a resolution to that. That does not, however, resolve some of the issues regarding the emphasis on community policing. The gentleman over there in the vest, I think, stated things very well, very rationally. The gentleman who also spoke earlier, who had been in Fallujah, related the issues to the difference between the military and community policing. That really, I think, is the main emphasis I want. I guess I didn't know how much I had grown to appreciate the character of Concord the 6 years that I've been here, until I felt it was being threatened. And that threat seems to be coming from this approach to policing, and not from what I see every day around me, which is a friendly neighborhood. That's it.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Bauman. Neil Connor. Neil Connor.
I had elected not to speak.
Okay, thank you very much. Leah Waltzko. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your last name. Leah Waltzko. Waltzko. Thank you.
Try not to repeat. I'm Leah Walshko. I live in Manchester. I do pay federal taxes, though, so I feel I have something to add to this discussion. I'd like to talk about numbers for a second that haven't been discussed before. On the $17 trillion we spoke of, and other things like that. I understand that the police officers run toward danger, and that's an admirable thing. That's what heroes do. But we need to put things into perspective when we govern, and like the prayer that you started your meeting with today, you have to weigh everything and use justice as your measuring stick. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reports every year the 10 most dangerous jobs in America. Police force members are not on that list. Taxi drivers are, roofers are, who else do we have? Farmers, garbage collectors are more likely to be seriously injured or killed in the line of their duty. So I understand the police officers want the most up-to-date equipment that they can get. That makes sense from their perspective, but your perspective is one of justice. And that same money that will be used and can't be spent again could buy, instead, 182 New Hampshire residents food stamps for a year. It could buy 1 year's Section 8 housing for 60 average recipient families in this state. It could buy 1 year's disability payments for 8 100% injured veterans that have come home from serving us overseas. It could buy 32 single-parent, 2-child families TANF assistance for a full year. These too are real threats. Hunger is a real threat. You can die from that as well. I ask you to weigh with justice and rationality and not be driven by blind fear. One last little set of statistics for us to put some things in perspective. I don't know if I have my, I heard Chris Booth say that every couple of years someone dies in Concord. I did some investigation and all I could find was in 2011 there was a single murder and you had to go back to 2004 before that. 2 people since 2004 have been murdered in this city. You are, and this is from the federal government as well, National Safety Council, your chance of dying from a hornet stinging you is 1 in 71,000. Your chances of dying by being struck by lightning are 1 in 126,000. And your chances of dying from a terrorist attack are 1 in 20 million. So we need to put the brakes on the fear, and we need to act rationally. Terrorism works because it makes people irrational, and it makes them destroy themselves. That's what's happening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a question. You alluded to the things that the money could be better spent on, but do you believe that actual federal money would ever be spent on anything except for safety?
Yes, I do. I think you have a chance in this room right now for a small victory of rational thought, and that it could encourage other small town councils in this state and across this country to do the same thing. I've spent some time in Concord testifying in front of state lawmakers, and what I hear them is they tell me, go talk to your people that go to DC. I come here, I'm told, go talk to them. There never seems to be any place to go to put the brakes on everybody running our country. You want to know what the real danger is? Cast your glance over to Detroit. Take a look at what's happening in countries that are going bankrupt over in Europe. We have real danger coming. Yes, I do think that it's possible that if we made the right decision here, and I implore you to do that, and I don't mean to now make anybody angry, and I'm not a member of the Free State Project, but if I lied on a government form, I wouldn't be able to fix it with a little side deal. I would be held accountable. I want that form withdrawn at the Department of Homeland Security. I don't want something else done. I don't want the Department of Homeland Security to have in a file somewhere because I don't feel safe that those people that have come here and that have lived here all their lives are seen as a terrorist threat. I am afraid of my federal government. And some of the recent revelations, I think, show that we have reason to be. This isn't all tinfoil hat. And I don't know if this council can be held legally to blame if you sign off on a fraudulent form. But if you can, and you do, I hope they sue you. I hope they sue this city for as much as they can get. I honestly do. And that will cost this city real money out of this city's pocket.
Thank you.
You're welcome very much.
Kevin Bloom.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, thanks for hearing me. I'll make this very brief. I think everybody's pretty much covered all of the objections, but my name is Kevin Bloom. I'm a Concord resident, and I wanted to see if Chief Duval knew my name. because apparently, unbeknownst to me, I was assigned with 1 day of causing a daily challenge. I believe there are only around 7 Free Staters who live in Concord. I think most of them are in this room. So I was just curious if they knew our names, and they could have just taken us to lunch, or they could have offered us $30,000 and we'd stop terrorizing people. It's a win-win all around. And I did get a parking ticket 4 months ago, but it was dismissed. So I think we're clean, and I don't think we're a threat to the city of Concord, possibly to the beer supply. But do I have any questions? That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman. Are there any questions? Thank you very much for your testimony. I have 1 minute. Alva Miradol. Okay. I'm sorry, you're going to have to correct me.
I have to stand.
That's fine. Could you, are you able to move the microphone up higher so we can hear you? Right. You can introduce yourself, please.
My name is Alva McDowell, and I am designated mother of the Occupy New Hampshire. And I am offended that we are called terrorists. Well, not really, but... Well, ladies and gentlemen of Concord City Council, the members of the press, the members, the fellow citizens of New Hampshire. Good evening to all of you. I stand before all of you tonight with my earnest intent to speak in behalf of those of my fellow citizens concerned of those outcome both today and the future of the next 7 generations to come. I am here to remind you that whatever decision you make tonight is going to linger on for the next 7 generations ahead of me and you. When this issue surfaced on my Facebook page, it sent shivers on my spine. The memories of the Tiananmen Square massacre engulfed my mind. There it is, an exemplified example of what can happen when we fail to look beyond the now. Those students are protesters whose bodies are blown into little tiny pieces of flesh, were children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren of the same men and women who made the acquisition of the Humvees. We don't have the Bearcat back then. We have the Humvees. Have made. Whatever you decide, it is going to come and is going to be used against you when your position as a ruling class is over. They could be bribing you today when your voice is alive and meaningful. But time is coming that you will become one of us. Like us, the tyrant is going to silence you and voices of the 7 generations ahead of you. The mere picture of an armored vehicle makes the First Amendment right mute. Its impact on meaningful dialogue impossible. Imagine you next to another man at point range with .45 caliber in his hand asking you, "Do you love me?" You have no option even to remain silent. That is the closest scenario that I can tell you that can happen to all of us. It doesn't erode our unalienable rights. Rather, it reduces our very existence to nothing, next to nothing. Reduces the value of humanity, both the assailant and the assaulted, in a category below the working machine.
Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up, please.
Turn our joy to grief and sorrow, and our happiness to an endless fear of security. An endless fear of security. What kind of existence is that?
Thank you very much. Would you like to submit that in as part of the record? Thank you very much.
And if I may add one thing that the chief didn't mention, in Wikipedia, the Bearcat is, and in my, I have a pretty intimate relationship with Humvees, that those armored vehicles can be modifiable. They can shoot cannons, they can shoot, they didn't use tear gas on a canister, they used those Humvees with cannons of tear gas.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Is there anybody else wishing to testify that was not able to sign up on a card? Okay, let's see. I see a lot. There were a few people here first. So you, sir, are in the front row.
Yes.
My name is Michael Laurie. I'm a resident of Enfield, the town in the compact. I'm a third-generation Granite Stater. My mother graduated from Concord High School. I'm also a U.S. military veteran. I served in the U.S. Air Force. If you had told me 20 years ago when I was serving my country and defending it against the Soviet Union that someday we would have armed personnel carriers used to roam the streets of Concord, New Hampshire, I would have told you you're a raving lunatic. Because that sort of thing doesn't happen here in America, where people are free and we have a government that is a government of, by, and for the people. So the idea that we should have that just because it's free money, it's not free money, it's all of our money. And it's more than just all of our money, it's debt. You know, and debt is a form of slavery. The more this country goes into debt, the heavier the chains on all of us. And you need to think about that. It's not something you can just toss off and say, no, it's not my responsibility. It's everybody's responsibility. And as previous speakers have said, you know, the Marine Colonel talked about it being an army in place that's being built, standing army that's being used, that's being put together. And he's absolutely correct. You're just thinking about, well, what can one armored vehicle do, really? So the fact is that the Department of Homeland Security has already deployed over 2,700 of these armored vehicles across the country. And you wonder, you know, how much of a force that is. The U.S. and all of NATO, at the height of the Cold War, had less armored vehicles in Europe to face off against the Soviet Union than Homeland Security is deploying across our country against our own citizens. And you need to stand up as American citizens and put your foot down and say, that stops here.
Thank you very much. And any green shirt over there? I'm sorry, Mr. Lawyer, also. Oh.
My name is Monica McKeechin, and I've lived in Concord for several years. Before that, I've lived in Nashua, New Hampshire. I've lived in Massachusetts. I can tell you right now that I have not felt safe with the police as it is now. You don't have to actually go out and protest. All you have to do is be not normal, or what most people consider not normal. Having a mental illness, the police do not understand how to communicate well. I've lived in the projects in Massachusetts and have the police hung up on me. I've had my child taken away from me in Nashua, New Hampshire, and the police chose to do the blame the victim game. And my boyfriend, in 2011, my boyfriend called the police on me. He's a registered sex offender, has to register every year with them. They should know who he is. Yet a squad of 3 large men stepped through my living room without identification whatsoever and was questioning me. And when I asked if I could get dressed, one of them said to me, "Are we going to have a problem here?" I felt terrorized in my own home. And this was in 2011. I can count on one hand all the good experiences I've ever had with any police officer.
Thank you very much. Mr. Haas, you're next.
Mr. Chairman?
See, I haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah. We miss you over at the Executive Council.
That's your testimony.
Speaking of the Executive Council, I have given the Governor and the Executive Council information on federal funding. I presume this is federal funds, right?
It is, Mr. Haas. Could you actually identify yourself for the record?
Yeah, Joe Haas. I work in Concord. I live in Gilmanton.
Thank you.
And there's a report that is supposed to be coming out of the Attorney General's office any time now because he is investigating, Joe Foster, the new Attorney General, is investigating my complaint against all federal funds going to all these department heads. And I've notified these department heads by email and by phone and by just stating this at the Executive Council, that the vote in Congress for all these funds is unlawful. It's unlawful because Section 2 of the 14th Amendment says that when there's a state that does not elect their judges, which New Hampshire we don't elect our judicial officers, the representation in Congress shall be reduced. And the governor, by her Article 51 duty, is refusing to do that. And I've tried the citizen's arrest against her. I've tried an RSA. I offered her a citizen's arrest. She didn't want to do it. So I did a 594:14, which is a summons in lieu of an arrest. And I tried to get one of the state troopers, Scott Fry, to serve her. He refused. He gives it over to the AG for an investigation. So my request to all of you is to please have your counsel, I presume it's Jim Kennedy now rather than Paul Kavanaugh, right?
That'd be correct.
Yeah. Would he please contact the new Attorney General and ask him for the report, not the investigation, but to force the report out of him that shows that New Hampshire is one of 11 states that we do not elect our judicial officers. And this goes back to when Judd Gregg was a federal rep. I asked him when he was over at the Highway Hotel. This thing's been going on for years and decades.
So, Mr. Haas, what does that have to do with the link up? The Bearcat? Are you suggesting that we should only have one congressman?
Yes,
How
but
does that tie into the Bearcat?
because the vote for this money is unlawful. The end does not justify the means. For you to accept this and to agree that that vote was lawful is unlawful on your part, and you'd be liable as like receiving stolen property, stolen funds.
I get it. Thank you. Any questions?
Is Jim Kennedy here today?
He happens to be here.
Oh, I'd appreciate you giving him an order to do it, because he might just sit on it.
Thank you, Mr. Haas.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Good to see you.
Same here.
All right, who is next that didn't get to sign up? Your hand went up while Mr. Haas was testifying. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Carrie DePhillips, and I live in Lincoln, New Hampshire, which is one of the cities that the police chief listed as being serviced by the potential Bearcat. I also have a letter from Devin Chafee, who was unable to make it here today.
Okay.
She's the head of the NHW.
Are you from this? Are you from the?
No, I just happen to have that letter.
Okay.
I wanted to talk about public perception. I'm a business owner. I own a PR firm. I am responsible for some of the national news coverage of this Bearcat event, and I suspect some of the future coverage of this Bearcat hearing. Have any of you seen the Lenco Bearcat promotional video?
Yes. That thing is scary.
A lot has been said about how this is a rescue vehicle. The word rescue is nowhere in the Bearcat acronym. The R stands for recovery. Recovery and attack response. Sorry. Response. And attack is definitely in there. And if you look at the Bearcat video, which has now been taken off of the internet, there are still some TOR files that you can access if you really want to hunt it down. If you're interested, I'm sure we can dig it up for you, and I'd be happy to send y'all a copy of it. It doesn't show that Bearcat being used to rescue anyone. It shows it being used as an attack vehicle. And I think that that's something that we all really need to consider. What is this going to be used for in a city that has had 2 homicides in 10 years? I think it's unnecessary. I think it's a waste of tax dollars, and I think that a lot of you know that too. It's easy to take free money when it's on the table, and I encourage you all to do the right thing and say no and stand up for yourselves and for your community.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right. right. Way in the back with the orange shirt and glasses. Good evening and welcome.
Evening. Jesse Mertz, resident of Pembroke.
Oh, I called you a lot earlier.
Yeah, I tried to
You
get
could have been here. You could have been out here an hour
It's
ago.
cool. I was going to say it again. Actually, sort of touching on what the previous speaker just mentioned. I think it all comes back down to marketing and public perception. If none of you have seen the Bearcat video that was on the front page of Lenco or whatever the Massachusetts company that manufactures the Bearcat, if you haven't seen that video, I highly suggest that you do find a way to watch it before you make your decision here this evening, as it is a slow, somber piano concerto set to the Boston bombings and the subsequent martial law that ensued, with police pointing AR-15s at residents in their home from a Bearcat. 10, 15 minutes of this. It's repugnant. It's absolutely disgusting that they're capitalizing on a tragedy to sell communities weapons that they don't need. And I think that just speaks volumes to how the military-industrial complex has infiltrated every part of our society to the point that it's now happening in our hometowns, and we're seeing stuff occur that people said would never happen in this country. It could never happen here. And I would just like to echo, or restate, shall I say, there was a lot of other people that said it can't happen here, too. And we fought a war for that. Thank you.
Mr. Mertz. Appreciate it.
Any questions? I highly encourage you to watch that video if anyone else that hasn't seen it.
Thank you. The gentleman in the plaid blue shirt. Gotta be fast. Whoever holds their hand up real quick. You did, sorry. I got you the next time.
I just want to say that.
Sir, could you introduce yourself?
Oh, my name is Shane. Sorry, I'm a little choking up. My name is Shane Fletcher, and I live in Concord, New Hampshire. And I just want to say that this is a lot of money spent on something that could be spent on stuff that is more positive. We're spending all this money on fighting problems and stuff like that. It's like the catfish in the fish tank that only feeds off the problems. Why not we just get above that and be able to do things like putting more money in schools, putting more money in education? And another thing is that a lot of these people who are here know what this Bearcat is, and you all say it's a rescue equipment. Well, are you going to say that 5 years from now, or a couple of years from now when you're reelected? Because we all have it on record that you're saying that, and when things go awry and police end up having too much power on their hands, we're going to remember this night, and it's going to reflect in our voting next election cycle, which would be next year or whatever.
Thank you very much. This fall. Thank you. Sir with a black t-shirt. Welcome. If you could introduce yourself, state where you're from as well.
My name is Marco Martino. I am from Epsom, and I work in Concord. And I think one of the big concerns I have with the Bearcat is the misuse of it. And I witnessed misuse of force by state and local police firsthand. There was a missing persons report filed a couple of years ago, and the actual circumstances of it was a girl had lied to her mom about where she was going, and instead of going to her friend's house, she met up with her friend and came to Chichester. Her mom found out where she was, called the police, and reported that her daughter had gone missing and was believed to be found at this address. The police came in force, state and local, about 5 cruisers, I believe 8 officers altogether. The girl came right out. They found her. There was no fight. They wanted to come into the house illegally, and they would not let them in. The girl who owned the house was being very vocal. She was about 5'2", maybe 100 pounds soaking wet, and 8 police officers tased her 4 times in order to enter the house. They arrested everybody that was in the house and did not charge anybody with any crime, and there were no convictions.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am, right over there with the glasses and the chair.
Hello, my name is Tara Powell.
I'm sorry, can you say that over again?
My name is Tara Powell. I'm from Canterbury. I've lived here my entire life. We're a sleepy community here in New Hampshire. If we fought really hard to repeal Stand Your Ground, I'm not sure where the logic to want tanks is. That's my one question. If you want to repeal Stand Your Ground for the lack of violent crime that is posed by a law that you can stand your ground as a citizen, why do cops get tanks? That's my one question.
Thank you very much. Right on the end, right over there. Yes, yep, you. Welcome. Can you state your name for the record, please?
Hi, my name is Emily Spencer. I'm a Concord High School student, and I live on Kent Street in Concord. I'm here today to address how the Bearcat reflects to the community, because I really respect Concord as a community and how the people can come together and feel safe. And reflecting on what I've heard earlier, I want to reiterate that the Bearcat shows a militarization of the police, and I don't think that reflects Concord's values. And I really hope that you, as the representatives of Concord, listen to us and hear what we have to say, that this isn't what Concord needs. Thank you.
Thank you for showing up tonight. I appreciate you're the third high school student we've had tonight, which is unusual. So it's very good. Very hard to see other people come out and speak. Thank you. Sarah, please. No clapping one way or the other. Good evening, sir. Please state your name for the record, please.
My name is James Coakley. I moved here for Free State Project 2 years ago. Before that, I came from the Orlando area, so it just shows my commitment towards freedom, peaceful community I want to be a part of. And tonight I'm speaking basically in the matter of perspective or perception that people see out of this whole hearing. This is not anything new that I haven't seen in other places, city councils, county commission meetings, and that. But basically, like the other gentleman back there, I had served in the military at least 20 years ago against what we know now as the former Soviet Union. And I watched a lot of things change in that time. And one of it being that a lot of people no longer look at city councils and that as addressing their issues anymore, because it seems like people come here or any city council meeting, they speak, and then you're like, yeah, but your mind's pretty much already made up. And the other factor is that there's this perception that you use in your application to sit there and label groups like Occupy or the Free State Project, which are peaceful movements, as terrorists. Well, I can tell you this right now, since September 11th, I've already had that label. I'm an ex-military veteran, so I'm automatically labeled a terrorist, according to your government. And I just think it's sad that you're going to sit here and support, despite all these people from many different backgrounds, to try and approve through an armored vehicle that nobody wants. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right. So we got way in the back there.
Good evening. Thank you very much. I was not planning to speak, so this will be very quick. I'm Tanya Rochette. I live in Concord. I've been here for about 10 years, and I came here with every intention to listen, to learn, and to hear the concerns from all sides. And what I've learned tonight is no one is listening to one another. Unfortunately, there's been a blatant disregard for ground rules set by the City Council with respect for time and ensuring. While I appreciate a lot of the passion that's gone into the thoughts, I am a bit concerned with the lack of openness and willingness to listen to others. I've seen an incredible presence from the local police in the last few years, especially presence in National Night Out, and increased presence and willingness to become part of the public persona and integrate with the community, and really have been impressed with their outreach efforts and become a more friendly presence. And as a parent of an elementary school and a middle school student, I'm not okay with the 4-hour response time that our police and fire might need when seeking to protect my kids and my neighbors. So I do ask that you consider accepting this grant and these funds that are made available to protect our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sir in the brown shirt. And then sir in the blue shirt, you're next down. Good evening.
My name is William Kostrick, and I live in Manchester, New Hampshire. And I just wanted to speak briefly to the path, the method by which the Bearcat would be coming to Concord. The company that makes these, Lenco, their business model is unsustainable. It's corporate welfare, plain and simple. They build a product that would not survive in a free market, a product that nobody really wants or would purchase directly. So their model involves going to Washington, D.C. and convincing the feds to take money from all of these people and give it to the Department of Homeland Security, who then takes it and gives it to Lenco, and they call it a grant and pretend that they're doing us a favor. But again, they're just taking money out of our community and giving it to a company that builds a product that is unneeded and unwanted. And again, we know that because if it really was needed and wanted, then communities individually would be coming forward to purchase these, and they're not.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Sir. You want to testify? You're next.
Hello, my name is Christian Panapacker. I moved here in August 2011 for the Free State Project.
Here in Concord?
It was Manchester, and then in January 2012 it was Concord. Everyone has made any point I can make. I can't say anything new, but it's important to me that you understand what the Free State Project is. What is your understanding of what it is? That's my question for you.
You'll just have to continue to testify. We don't have a question and answer back and forth like that.
All right, well, if you'd like to talk to me later, I'll be here.
Okay.
We're not terrorists, and it's important to all of us, I believe.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Sir.
Thank you very much. I was born in Burbank, California. I moved to Maui, Hawaii in 1957. I moved to Concord, New Hampshire in 2005. My name is Charles Davidson. I love Main Street. I think Concord is probably one of the most vibrant, capital cities in the United States, and I've seen many. I've talked to many of your police officers as I'm just walking down, going to co-op, walking on the street. I've never seen any problems here, not one. I know about the Friendly Kitchen, and the issues of homelessness across the street in Merrimack. So it fathoms me to figure out why the Concord Police Department would need such a thing. I mean, really, in all honesty. I mean, really. I have a missing daughter. January 10th next year is the 10th year that she's been missing. She's in May 16th, wasn't here for 74. So I know all about, unfortunate situations where I might actually think of a Bearcat or a military vehicle. It might be, in use. In my circumstances, it would have been. I won't share the details because we don't have the time. But in Concord, one of the beautifulest cities in the United States. It doesn't need this. Symbolically, it's not good. So please reject this. There's other ways. Let's get back to the beat cops, you know, instead of just walking around, getting to know everybody, you know, all your merchants here, you know, knowing, and if there's any problem, if there's anything really, you know, concerning, you know, the people, and let the Concord police know what's up.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, sir, right over here. Yeah. And then sir in the black shirt, you'll be next. Okay. Way in the back.
Hello, I'm Charles Patterson. I'm Keene. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
You're welcome.
I stand here in total opposition to this council accepting a $250,000 grant to get a Bearcat, or Ballistic Engineered Armored Response Counter-Attack Truck. You position yourselves on the defensive. You claim that you are doing this to protect the people, but I'm going to claim that what you're saying is a lie. This isn't to protect the general people. The Bearcat is to protect your income, and your income is based on theft from people, and this Bearcat will be used against the people for government's gain. I'm confident that if you took a general poll of the people of Concord and the outlying areas where the Bearcat is speculated to be used, you'll find a majority of the people in opposition to moving in a tank to monitor them and their families. If you truly cared about democracy, why don't you take a referendum of this city and allow them to vote on the Bearcat issue? If you did this, you'd find a majority against the acceptance of a Bearcat. Now, the city of Concord, New Hampshire, a city that's supposed to be about the spirit of freedom, is labeling freedom-oriented individuals as domestic terrorists. I say it is not those that want less government in this country that represent a threat. It is the people that want more government in this country that represent a domestic threat. The individuals in this council ought to apologize for having the gall, the audacity to label terrorists the ones that actually live by the motto, live free or die. On top of that, you pretend as if the Bearcat is free. It's not you that has to pay for it, but I will, and the generations following will, and by actions like these, you stab the people basically in the back. I mean, think of your children. Do you want them born into a police state you're creating? Do you want them less prosperous and forced to pay the debt for your spending? If you allow this armored tank into the city of Concord and into the state of New Hampshire, you don't have to wonder what's happened to the world anymore. You can look in the mirror because the guilt will fall on you. If you want to enslave younger generations, just one more sentence, please. Even further into debt, get the Bearcat. If you want to militarize the police to use against the people, go ahead, get the Bearcat. If you want to have courage, if you want to stand up to the police state, if you want to live on in the tradition of what New Hampshire represents, you will not allow an armored tank to patrol the city of Concord. Thanks, but no tanks.
Thank you very much. Sir, right way in the back.
Question.
I'm sorry.
I just wanted a clarification that you're from Keene.
Sir, I'm sorry, there was a question, I missed it.
I think you said you were from Keene?
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh,
That was it.
oh, sorry.
You said it so quick, I didn't hear it. Thank
Oh,
you.
yeah.
It's a little more intimidating up here. You look a lot like Brad Paul from back home, but when I get closer, you have better hair.
It's rare when you get closer.
I wasn't planning on speaking. Thanks for listening.
Could you introduce yourself?
My name is Keith. I live west of Manchester.
Keith, what's your last name?
My last name is Ammon. So, and the only reason I'm here is because I'm a Free Stater. I moved here about 4 years ago from Pennsylvania, and it's because Free Staters were named on the application. That's the reason I think most of us are here. So I was glad about an hour ago when you guys were able to parse out the different issues that we're dealing with. One is a false application. The other one is a little more esoteric, and that is the militarization of the police. It seems esoteric, right? When I was a little kid, I grew up near Valley Forge Park. I had a green Schwinn with a yellow banana seat. And I rode through the park all the time and saw the plaques of the different battles that were fought. And I would imagine, I'd recreate it in my 13-year-old mind. So I think this had a lot of influence on, there's a lot of history here too as well, back in the Revolutionary War. And the militarization of the police is an issue because we might have to fight that battle again one day. If you look at how many rounds of ammunition the Department of Homeland Security is purchasing, you can see videos on YouTube of trucks, just like the Lenco Bearcat. You can see trains carrying armored personnel carriers and tanks that go on for miles. And no one knows exactly what they're for, but you can see the video, it's not made up. The federal government is arming up the local police forces. And it's slow, it's methodical, it's incremental. If you blink or if you don't really think about it, you're going to miss it. But this is what's happening. So that's the other issue that we're trying to highlight. There's a book that I haven't read yet, but I'm familiar with the author. It's The Rise of the Warrior Cop by Radley Balco. And I suggest that you get a copy and read it. He's a writer. He's written a lot about police abuse. And there's plenty of videos online. You can see police punching people, tasing people, shooting people's dogs. There's thousands of videos. We don't want that to happen here. That's what we're saying.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, is there anybody else? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Jason Rokeach. I'm a resident of Manchester, and I have money taken from me by the organization that is talking about distributing these funds. Which leads me to my first point. The use of the term federal funds is disingenuous. It's not federal funds, it's the funds of nearly everybody in this room. The second thing is we keep dropping the term community policing. When we talk about community policing, I think about the relationships that I've had over the years with various law enforcement officers that, unlike many people in this room, have been largely positive. I find that many of them believe wholeheartedly in what they're doing and providing a service to the community. However, when we talk about bringing in what is effectively a tank, we are militarizing the police force. We are changing the image and definition of what they do. And it's not possible to maintain the same community policing, the same attitude when we have militarized what they do. And I have one more point, which is simply that I don't object as strongly to simply being labeled a terrorist, but simply the fact that the terms Occupy New Hampshire and Free State Project were even thought of to be mentioned in the application. It's not an indication of just wanting to get the grant. It's an indication of what the actual intent is and what thoughts come to mind. If we just needed to name organizations to get the grant, we could have named the AARP, AAA, any credit union, but we didn't. What was mentioned were political organizations, and it is clear that the intent of this is simply to squash any freedom of speech. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else wishing to testify? Yes, sir. Right in the back.
Somebody else right next to
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Alex Weed. I'm a biochemist at the University of New Hampshire, and I would like to implore the committee to investigate the larger forces at play that are happening in this country surreptitiously. There are things bigger than all of us that are transpiring, and there's a lot of research that can be done that can maybe inform you about what's going on, and it's very concerning. And if you knew what most of us know, you would also be very concerned. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'm sorry, sir. Sir, we have a question for you from Councilman May.
I couldn't help you said if we knew what you know. What do you know that I don't know?
So,
Thanks, Keith.
There are large financial, economic problems in this country, and they are massive and potentially global. And by, this may seem like an insignificant decision to get this Bearcat, but you will be on the wrong side of history. And history will not look favorably upon this decision because it will be just a small step in the wrong direction. And people will always ask, well, how did we get here? How did we get to this point where we're not able to speak, where our currency has been destroyed, and the police are knocking down people's doors? People will wonder, how did this ever happen? It could be your children. And it's these small incremental steps that get us to that point. And like the woman earlier said, it could be you. You're not special. We're all just human beings. And when you're not in this position that you are in now, or perhaps your children, the federal government will be indifferent. There are larger forces at play that affect all of us. And, you know, you guys are just a cog in the system. You guys are just another gear that's turning and helping this perpetuate. It's small incremental steps, and I would just hope that you see the larger picture of what's going on in this country and around the world. Did I answer your question?
Not at all. But thank you for your testimony.
I'm sorry that I couldn't answer your question.
I still don't know what you mean, but I appreciate your testimony.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. There was somebody else who wanted to testify. So we're back there. Sir. Back. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Ian Underwood. To within 1%, I'm from Concord. First of all, I've never met you before, but I think you're doing an awesome job moderating this. This is a very contentious situation, and in case nobody else says it, I think you've done an amazing job for the time I've been in the room. So Mr. Kostrick earlier talked about the business model of the company who makes these. The money's gone. It's been taken in federal taxes. The problem is we'd like to get it back, and we can't just go to them and say we'd like to buy meals for poor people or send money to schools and do a lot of other things that a lot of other people have mentioned. So the question might be, how can we get it back in another form? And I apologize if I didn't get into here until relatively late. I apologize if this suggestion has been made or if the contract would forbid it, but it occurs to me one of the things that might make a lot of people happy would be if you amended the application, got the grant, got the Bearcat, sold it, and used the money from the Bearcat.
Thank you very much. All right, who else would like to testify? Sir.
I've got a built-in timer, so
Awesome.
this can't go too long, trust me. My name is Zeke Gable. This is my son Gideon. We are residents of Concord. And first of all, I want to thank the council for staying out this late to let everyone get their voice in. It's really important to me.
We're in the first part of our meeting. We're not even halfway done.
Yeah. And I do appreciate that.
Running for city council already.
I know. It's all the politics in Concord. And I love the city, and I love the atmosphere and all of the diverse discussion that happens here. And I think it would be a shame if we took this action, especially because of the sort of the way that it was acquired with the intent in the application. I know someone else asked you what you thought a free stater was, and I understand you can't answer. So let me just really try to quickly sum it up. It's made up largely of libertarians, and one of the tenets, the basic tenet is a non-aggression principle. We're peaceful by nature. We don't believe in the initiation of force. And I find it an irony that people who espouse this and discuss it and debate it using words are answered with a vehicle capable of defending, armored positions. And if we can't trust the people who put in that application to understand the nature of the Free State, which is very well documented and easy to talk to those members. I don't think we want them in charge of a platoon that uses such force or uses such defensive abilities. I'm sure there was other things I wanted to say, but I know there's lots of people who want to say it, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Gideon. Sir, right in the back.
Good evening.
Good evening and welcome.
My name's John Bellomo. I am a fellow Granite Stater. I currently live in Londonderry. A lot has been said tonight, going back and forth with a lot of things. I'd like to make this real quick. First of all, the gentleman who urged you to watch the promotional video is not something someone made up. This is a video that the company itself made as a sales tool to present to people who are interested in purchasing this vehicle. Do look for that video and watch it. This is not a defensive vehicle. It is not marketed as a defensive vehicle. It is not meant to be a defensive vehicle. Second, a young lady pointed out earlier that in the city of Concord, it's been 2 murders in 10 years. Is that true? I come from a city where that's every weekend. You do not need this vehicle, and that city doesn't have one. And I'd like to point out one last quick fact. Before I came here tonight, I wanted to do a little research on this myself and make up my own mind before I had anything to say about it. I did a quick Google search. So all I did was quote in protests turned violent in New Hampshire. The first item that came up was the incident that Representative Lambert brought up earlier that happened back in June in front of the State House. The next item, and I had to go through over 120 different Google entries on that one search. The next item that brought up a violent protest in the state of New Hampshire was in 1765 in Portsmouth when the Stamp Act was passed, where a mock funeral of liberty was held. And that was the British saying it was a violent protest. It does not happen in this state. We have, every 4 years, the eyes of the entire nation is on this state. You're all politicians. You see this, we're all citizens. We see this every 4 years. This is going to be the most politically motivated state in the country. It does not happen here.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Who's next? Right in the front.
I would like to extend the comments of Alex Weed, who discussed information that we know that you don't know. I believe when he referred to...
Sorry, sir.
Oh, my name is Darren Tapp. I live in Chichester.
Thank you very much. Could you say your last name again?
Tapp, T-A-P-P.
Thank you.
Okay. So I just wanted to address Alex Weed's comments. He mentioned financial issues, and I'm a mathematician by trade. 16.75 is about the national debt. It's been about that way for 3 months because that's the cap right now. As soon as the cap gets lifted, it's going to go up more, as it has every time the cap's been lifted in the past recent years. What happened in 2009 is the Federal Reserve started printing a whole bunch of money and buying treasury bonds with that money. This raised the monetary base from 0.8 trillion, less than 1 trillion, to, it's from 2009 to about today. And today it's around 2.9 trillion. So there's been $2 trillion that have been introduced into the economy to try to address issues like the housing bubble and things like that. Now, what else can I tell? Okay, so of that money that's been printed, and anyway, that's created, however it's created, doesn't matter if it's printed or not, a lot of it's gone to excess reserves that's held by the Federal Reserve. They started paying interest on the excess reserves in 2009, so that has spiked up. It's around 1.9 trillion, and the Fed reporting, the St. Louis Federal Reserve stopped reporting this number recently, so I don't have anything more recent than maybe June. But this is an incredible amount of money. If this money ever gets circulating into the economy, we'll see a rapid rise of prices, and we'll see a lot of panic by a lot of people who aren't aren't expecting this. And I believe that the reason why there are so many Bearcats that are, because one reason that there are so many that are offered to us, as some people say for free, but we just covered now it's not free, is because they want to quell some civil unrest that's going to happen when all of this comes tumbling down.
Thank you very much. That's a very good explanation in that amount of time.
Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you. Anybody else wishing to testify? We're only going to go once. Sorry, Mr. Little. Anybody want to testify?
You said up front.
What's that?
It isn't what you said at the beginning. You said you could have a secretary down.
Yeah, I know, but changing the rules. Sorry about that. We can't have everybody testify twice. I said if there was time. Yeah. I said if there was time, we'd go back. There's obviously not time. We really devoted a lot of time to this. Yeah. And I doubt your position's going to change from now until, unless your position's changed. But I doubt it. No, sorry, that's all right. That was a rhetorical question. Anybody else wishing to testify?
I've never seen this in the 12 years I've served.
Anybody else wishing to testify? Thank you very much. The hearing's closed. All right, next item on the agenda. Madam Clerk, if you read item D, please.
Ordinance